The last man sentenced to death by the Roman Senate waited 9 days before anyone showed up to carry it out. Iron sandals clinked on hard stone, the air thick with sweat and salt from the nearby sea. The ground beneath was slick, with the remnants of yesterday's meal, leftovers scattered like small bones in a forgotten feast. What if you were tasked with sharpening these very blades? What if your body couldn't keep pace with the endless drills and marches under the relentless sun, leaving you to die of exhaustion before sunrise? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. The whisper of wind through the open windows carried a promise of relief, but inside the barracks, darkness thickened like unwelcome shadows. The smell of warm bread and charred meat fills your nostrils, mingling with a faint hint of garlic and olive oil. The air hangs heavy around the hearth in what must be early morning. Perhaps dawn has just begun to break outside. A few embers still flicker within the stone-lined fire pit, casting an amber glow that dances across the rough-hewn walls and the soldiers gathered there. You are a new recruit in the Roman Legion, tasked with preparing for your first day of service. The weight of your tunic is comforting, warm from being pressed against you all night as you slept on the hard floor of this barrack. You shift slightly to get comfortable, rubbing your eyes that feel gritty and heavy. The other recruits around you are stirring, muttering in their waking groans. Some begin to rise slowly, stretching stiff limbs that have been cramped by the night's cold. Your stomach rumbles softly, reminding you that food is on its way. You glance over at your fellow soldiers, noticing a mix of men from different parts of Rome, each one wearing the same simple garb: woolen tunics, leather sandals, and belts with sheaths for daggers. "Breakfast's almost ready," says a burly man named Marcus, his voice gruff but familiar. "Better get to your place at the table before it gets all eaten up." You nod absentmindedly as you shuffle towards one of the tables laid out along the wall. The wood is rough and scarred from years of use, each mark telling its own story. You find a spot near the edge where the light from the fire shines brightest. As you settle in, you can see that others have already begun to eat their rations. The food arrives soon enough, a large platter laden with slices of bread and slabs of meat cut thickly from the leg of pork that hangs smoking above it. A bowl of porridge sits beside the main course, its contents a murky brown color that seems suspicious, but is likely just a mix of grains and water. You hesitate for a moment before picking up your spoon. "Go on," says a thin boy named Lucius, nudging you with his elbow. "You haven't had much to eat in days. It's no good sitting there starving." The weight of the heavy wooden bowl is comforting as it settles into your hands. The smell of cooking meat and fresh bread is almost too much. Your mouth waters involuntarily despite knowing that this meal could very well poison you before your enemy does. Why would a simple breakfast be so dangerous? You wonder aloud, breaking off a small piece of the charred pork to examine it closely. Its surface is blackened with smoke and dotted with tiny flecks of fat. The meat itself feels dry, but still warm from being cooked over an open flame for hours. The other men laugh at your concern. "Oh, don't worry about that," says a grinning centurion named Antonius, patting you on the back. His armor glints in the firelight as he continues to eat with gusto. You'll get used to it. It's just one of those quirks of Roman life. As if on cue, another recruit, a young man named Gaius, chokes and coughs violently, his face turning red from what seems like an allergic reaction to the food. Gaius! What in Hades is wrong with you? Shouts Antonius, concerned as he rushes over. The Centurion grabs a cup of water from the side table and pours it down Gaius's throat while he pats him on the back. You watch this scene unfold, your stomach churning slightly at the thought that what could kill one man might well do you in two. Antonius returns to his seat, shaking his head with exaggerated exasperation, but a hint of pride in his eyes for having saved Gaius just now. That's why I tell everyone, eat up and don't worry about it, he says, gesturing at the table as if daring anyone else not to follow suit. Now come on, let's finish this before we get back to our duties. The meal continues in a haze of conversation and food, a blend of salted pork, sweet porridge with hints of honey, and crusty bread that has been hardened by long storage, but is still more than welcome after so many days without much sustenance. As you chew on your food, the realization begins to sink in. This is just one small part of what makes life, as a Roman legionnaire, uniquely challenging. The day stretches ahead with countless tasks and duties, training exercises, drills, marching in formation, and you find yourself eagerly anticipating them all. There's something oddly reassuring about the routine, even if it means enduring meals that could be deadly under different circumstances. Perhaps this is part of what bonds soldiers together, a shared experience, no matter how grim. As dawn truly breaks and the sun rises over the horizon, casting long shadows across the barracks, you finish your breakfast with a sigh of contentment. The warmth from the fire slowly fades as the morning light strengthens, but the lingering smell of cooking meat lingers on in the air. You gather up any remaining scraps of food, tucking them into your pack for later use, perhaps a bit of cheese or an apple left over from yesterday's rations. With a final glance around at your fellow legionnaires still finishing their own meals, you rise to your feet and stretch again, feeling both the weight of exhaustion after so little sleep and the excitement of finally beginning this new chapter in your life. The day ahead will be long but full of purpose, and perhaps, with luck, just maybe it won't end as abruptly or painfully as some might fear. As you step outside into the cool morning air, the sounds of daily routine begin to fill the space. Shouts from centurions giving orders, creaking of wooden sandals on hard stone paths, and distant chanting of prayers offered in gratitude for another day's beginning. You take a deep breath, feeling the chill against your skin as you prepare yourself for whatever challenges lie ahead. And so begins yet another day in the life of a Roman legionnaire, a day that could easily become just one more in an endless cycle of toil and struggle, yet somehow, despite it all, holds within its bounds both hope and resilience. As you rise from your makeshift cot, the morning light filters through the thin canvas that serves as your tent's ceiling. The air is heavy with the promise of a new day, a day filled not only with toil, but also with hope and resilience. You stretch your limbs, feeling the fatigue still clinging to them like an old, unwelcome companion. Your first task in this daily ritual is to fetch water from the nearby stream for breakfast. The journey there and back requires more effort than you might think. Every step is a reminder of the body's limitations under constant strain. As you fill your leather pouch, you catch sight of a small fish thrashing weakly against the current. A quick decision, perhaps it will serve as an impromptu snack, or perhaps not. The thought of eating raw flesh in this heat leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Upon returning to camp, you hear the faint sound of steel clinking together and the occasional groan of exertion from fellow Legionnaires who are already awake. Breakfast is simple, a hunk of barley bread dipped in olive oil or a few figs if luck favors you that day. Your stomach growls with anticipation as you tear off chunks of the dry, crusty bread. It's not a feast by any means, but it serves to keep hunger at bay until lunch. The morning march begins soon after breakfast, and for today, your unit is tasked with laying down another layer of defensive earthworks around the camp perimeter. The sun climbs higher in the sky, and sweat beads upon your brow as you work side by side with your comrades, shoveling dirt, hauling stones, and setting stakes that will eventually form a formidable barrier against any approaching enemy. Despite the grueling nature of this task, there's an unspoken camaraderie among those who share this daily toil. You pass messages in whispers between breaks, tales of home or jokes meant as distractions from the relentless work. It is moments like these that remind you why you chose the Legion, a sense of belonging and purpose that can't be found anywhere else. By midday, your lunch rations are meager, a few stale bread rolls, some hard cheese wrapped in leaves to keep them from crumbling, and perhaps a handful of olives or grapes. These meager portions serve as sustenance for the remainder of the day's activities, more marching, more building, and endless training drills that test both your physical limits and mental fortitude. As you sit down on a rock, wiping sweat from your brow with the rough cloth tied around your neck, you can't help but marvel at how this simple meal could become poison before even reaching an enemy's lips. The barley bread is not only hard to digest, but also prone to containing harmful substances, worms or fungus, that thrive in the warm conditions of late summer. Your stomach churns as you think about it, yet here you are, consuming these same bread rolls day after day. Yet, despite such thoughts, there's a strange satisfaction in knowing that your enemies might face similar challenges before they even lay their eyes on you. The Roman legion was known for its unwavering discipline and the ability to survive under conditions that would drive many others mad or weak. It is this resilience, honed through years of training and shared hardship, that keeps each soldier fighting until his very last breath. As the day draws to a close, you find yourself reflecting on why you chose this path. The Legion offers more than just survival. It provides structure, purpose, and an unbreakable bond with your fellow men. Each challenge, no matter how daunting, whether it's digging another mile of trench or facing off against a formidable foe, is met head-on by the sheer force of will that defines you as a Roman legionnaire. And so, as night falls once again over this campsite, you settle in for what could be just one more day, or perhaps not. The future is uncertain. Battles and skirmishes await on every horizon. But tonight, under a starlit sky punctuated by the distant calls of wildlife, you find yourself content, a warrior ready to face whatever tomorrow may bring. Tomorrow will be another challenge, another meal that might poison you before your enemy did. Yet here you are, preparing for it all with a heart full of hope and resilience. The weight of your armor presses down like a heavy blanket on you, even though it's still early and the sun hasn't risen yet. You can feel its cool metal under the thin layer of leather that protects your skin from chafing. The smell of sweat and hay fills the air as you stand in the stables, waiting for orders. Tomorrow will be another challenge, another meal that might poison you before your enemy did. Yet here you are, preparing for it all with a heart full of hope and resilience. The night is cold, and your breath forms tiny clouds around your mouth. You draw on the warmth of the stable walls as you shuffle through the rows of wooden stalls, each one housing horses that have been fed but not yet turned out to graze in the morning light. The air smells faintly of hay and horse manure, mingled with a hint of stale grain from last night's feedings. You hold up your lantern, casting flickering shadows on the rough stone walls as you inspect each stall for any signs of neglect or damage. Your fingers run along the sturdy wooden bars, feeling their smooth surface under the thick leather gloves that protect them from chafing and splinters. The horses are quiet in their sleep, their rhythmic snoring is almost soothing. You approach a mare with her foal tied to one side. This stall has been assigned to you for tonight's feeding duties. Her coat shines despite the early hour, reflecting the light of your lantern like polished silver. She tosses her head gently as if sensing your presence, and you can feel her breath on your arm as she exhales. You open the door ajar with a click that echoes slightly in the stillness of the stable. The foal is nuzzling its dam's side. Both are warm to the touch, their bodies radiating heat even before they've started eating. You reach for the small bag of oats you carry and pour them into the trough. Each handful drops with a satisfying clink against the wooden sides. As you work, your thoughts drift back to last night's feast in the mess hall, crude but hearty fare that fills both body and soul. The smell of garlic-laced meat still lingers on your tongue as you recall the heavy bread and strong wine. But tonight is different. This is about ensuring these horses are well fed before they head out into the day. You finish with the mare's foal, then move to a stall at the far end that houses an old warhorse named Gyrus. He stands still even as you approach, his eyes half closed but alert. His coat is rougher than most, likely from years of hard use and little grooming. You run your hand down his side carefully, feeling the familiar pattern of scars that crisscross his flanks. Gyrus lets out a low whinny when you touch him, and you can feel the slight shiver ripple through his body as he responds to your presence. He's old now, perhaps in his 30s by Legion standards, but still strong enough for a day of marching or light fighting. His eyes meet yours briefly before closing again. You feed Gyrus with an equal handful and then turn towards the door. As you open it wide, a draft rushes in, carrying with it hints of dawn, just enough light to see by now. The world outside is still sleeping. The stars are fading into the pale gray of early morning. You step out onto the cobbled courtyard that separates the stables from the rest of the Legion's quarters. The courtyard is quiet, except for the distant sounds of guards patrolling their posts and chickens squawking in a corner where they've found shelter overnight. The air carries a fresh, crisp scent mixed with earthy notes of dried grass and decaying leaves from last autumn. You can feel the dew on your skin as it clings to you like a second layer of armor. You walk towards the mess hall, its doors already open, but not yet bustling with activity. Inside, the wood benches are still empty. Only a few soldiers have begun their day by now, those who must rise early for some duty or another. The smell inside is warm and comforting, like baked bread and stewed vegetables. You head to your own place at one of the long tables. The wooden surface is smooth, but rough beneath your fingers as you run them across it. You take a seat on a bench that's slightly hard from age and wear, perfectly ordinary, just like every other piece here. As you wait for others to join you, you can hear the murmur of voices growing louder outside, the first stirrings of an army waking up before dawn. The clinking of armor as soldiers move about their morning routines fills your ears, a constant reminder that today will be another day filled with challenges and trials. The food is passed around among the tables, small portions but plentiful enough to keep you going through long days on the march or in battle. Grains mixed with vegetables, seasoned simply yet satisfyingly. You take your share, feeling its warmth against your hands as it's placed before you. As you begin to eat, you can feel the weariness of a night spent caring for horses and preparing yourself for another day. The small comforts, like this food that nourishes both body and soul, are what keep you going. Each bite is a testament to survival in an environment where life often feels like a daily struggle. Tomorrow will be another challenge, another meal that might poison you before your enemy did. Yet here you are, preparing for it all with a heart full of hope and resilience. The weight of the day ahead presses down on you, but you carry on, step by careful step, in the world where legions march and battles rage. The night descended on Centurion Marcus Aurelius with a heavy blanket of darkness that seemed to press down upon his very soul. He stood alone by the flickering torchlight in his tent, its flame casting eerie shadows across his weathered features. The silence was deafening. It echoed off the stone walls and into the heart of his being. This night held no tales of glory or heroism. Instead, it carried with it a weight far more personal, a burden that threatened to consume him. Aurelius closed his eyes, letting the weight of the day wash over him once again. He thought back to the training ground earlier in the afternoon, where recruits had lined up for inspection under the keen gaze of their tribunes. His hand tightened around the wooden staff he carried as a symbol of command, a simple tool that somehow felt more like a burden than an honor. The memory played out before his mental eye, the first-year recruit who stumbled and dropped his pack, sending flour flying into the air, the second-year recruit whose muscles trembled with fear but still managed to lift 2 times his own weight. Aurelius watched them both, the one who faltered and the one who succeeded, knowing that every man's journey in this legion would be different. A soft knock at the tent flap interrupted his reverie, causing him to jump slightly. He straightened, wiping the sweat from his brow as he addressed the newcomer with a curt nod. "Enter," he said, his voice rough and tired. The door creaked open, revealing Centurion Lucius, Aurelius's closest ally in this crucible of duty and survival. His eyes met Aurelius's with unwavering resolve, but there was also something else, a flicker of understanding that Aurelius could not quite place. "Marcus," he began softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Aurelius stepped away from the wall, offering Lucius a seat beside him on a small wooden stool. The 2 men sat in silence for moments before Lucius spoke again, this time more urgently. We need to talk about tonight. Aurelius's gaze flickered to the ground, his mind racing with memories of the past year, of discipline and brutality, of comradeship forged under the same sky but tested by the fires of war. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself as he met Lucius's eyes once more. "I know it's hard," Lucius continued, "but tonight is not like any other night in this legion." Aurelius nodded slowly, his mind already racing through possible scenarios. Tonight was the night for silent records, nights when every soldier would be expected to carry out their duties without a word spoken. The concept seemed absurd. Why would anyone need secrecy and silence amidst such chaos? But the answer lay not in words or logic, but in survival. Lucius leaned forward, his voice lowering even further as he spoke of the hidden dangers that lurked within every shadow, enemies both known and unknown who watched with equal fervor. "Tonight," Lucius said quietly, "is a test. A test to see if you have what it takes." Aurelius felt the weight of those words settling into his bones. He had come this far in the Legion, a soldier among soldiers, but he was still just one man in an army of thousands. The night ahead promised no respite, only relentless pressure and unyielding expectations. As they prepared for their patrol through the darkened camp, Aurelius felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. He looked to Lucius once more, finding strength not just from his friend's presence, but also in something deeper, a shared understanding that transcended mere survival. Tonight might be another challenge, another meal that could poison them before their enemy did, yet they carried on step by careful step. Together, under the cold gaze of the night sky, Aurelius and Lucius made their way through the silent ranks of the Legion, men whose faces were hidden behind masks of discipline and duty. Each soldier moved with purposeful silence, blending into the darkness as one cohesive unit, a testament to their training, but also a reminder that even in unity lay potential vulnerability. The night stretched on, punctuated only by occasional shadows or the soft rustle of leaves, yet within each man's heart burned an unquenchable spirit. For tonight was not just about enduring, it was about rising above the relentless demands and proving one's worth, not to others, but first to oneself. The morning dew clung to your tunic like a cool, sticky embrace, its dampness seeping through the fabric and clinging uncomfortably against skin. The air was crisp, with the scent of fresh earth and decaying leaves from last night's rain, mingling oddly with the faint, acrid smell of sweat and metal that hung heavy over the camp. You rubbed your hands together, feeling the weight of your shield in them, its smooth wood surface marred by years of abuse and wear. You stumbled out of your tent into the soft light of dawn, breaking through the thin veil of mist, stretching as you felt the cold ground underfoot. Your breath came out in puffs of white air that quickly evaporated. The camp was just waking up. A few soldiers were already making their way to fetch water from the nearby stream, buckets clinking softly against each other and metal armor jangling with every step. As you moved through the encampment, your eyes scanned for any sign of activity or commotion. You had been assigned as a new recruit here in the Roman Legion, tasked by the Centurion to learn the ways of soldiering from scratch. The weight of that responsibility was almost palpable. It settled heavily on your shoulders like an unyielding burden. The smell of breakfast wafted over from one of the mess tents, charred meat and stale bread mingling with the distinct aroma of garlic, a staple in every legionary's diet for its preservative qualities. The air here was thick with the drone of daily life, a mix of grunts, clicks, and occasional exclamations as soldiers went about their morning routines. You approached one such soldier, his back to you as he fumbled with his armor belt. He was a seasoned veteran by the look of it, his cloak hanging in folds around him like tattered wings. You hesitated for just a moment before tapping him on the shoulder. He turned, and you saw the years etched into his face, eyes that had seen too much, but still held a glint of youthful defiance. "Good morning," he said gruffly, wiping sweat from his brow with a greasy hand. "Name's Marcus. What's yours?" You nodded, feeling your throat dry out as you replied, "Just Lucius for now." Marcus sized you up before nodding in acceptance. "Right then, Lucius. You know what to do today." "I expect you to show the others how it's done," he said, with a mock sternness that couldn't quite hide his amusement. "Show them." "How?" you asked, feeling your cheeks flush slightly under the weight of expectation. Marcus chuckled and ruffled your hair in a way that felt more like a father might. "Start by making sure you can hold your shield properly," he said. "And don't forget to practice those calcanthus. Those are the little leather straps on either side, used for gripping." You nodded, already feeling the tension coil within you as you prepared to learn these basics. The weight of Marcus's words settled heavily in your mind. Holding a shield was just one tiny piece of this immense puzzle that was soldiering. Your eyes wandered over the encampment once more, taking in the rows of tents and the constant hum of activity around them. Soldiers were starting their morning ablutions, some washing up at communal buckets, while others polished their armor or sharpened their swords. The clinking sounds of metal against stone echoed through the camp as they prepared for another day. As you continued to observe, your thoughts drifted back to what awaited you today: drills and training exercises that would test not just your strength, but also your endurance. You had heard tales of how harsh these practices could be, how even a minor mistake or hesitation could earn a lash from the Centurion's whip. The thought made your stomach churn, though you tried to push it away. The morning sun crept higher into the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the ground as soldiers moved about with purposeful steps. You noticed a group of recruits gathered around their instructor, a grizzled old veteran who was giving them instructions in a sharp, clipped tone. His words were lost on you for now, but the intensity of his gaze and the determined set of his jaw seemed to reverberate through the encampment. Feeling a strange mix of excitement and apprehension, you made your way over to join the others who had begun stretching their limbs. The ground was hard underfoot, dried mud crunched beneath each step as soldiers moved in unison, warming up for what would come next. You mimicked their movements, reaching high with arms outstretched, bending at the knees, and then springing back to a standing position. The muscles in your legs protested against this sudden exertion, but you forced yourself through it, willing them to loosen and comply. Sweat began to form on your brow as the morning wore on. The instructor's voice cut through the silence like a sharp blade. "Now, let's do the calcanthus." You watched as he demonstrated how to grip the leather straps securely around his wrist, a technique that required both strength and dexterity. You copied him with trembling hands, trying to mimic his ease and control. The leather was tough against your skin, rubbing chafing marks that would soon turn into blisters. As you continued practicing, the sounds of other exercises echoed through the camp. Shouts from drill sergeants, clanking metal as soldiers trained their bodies for battle. You felt a small sense of camaraderie with those around you. Shared struggles and shared pain seemed to forge an invisible bond between these men who were strangers just yesterday. The Calcanthus drills turned into a rhythmic dance, each soldier moving in sync like gears within a well-oiled machine. The repetitive motion was almost hypnotic, allowing your mind to wander as the muscles in your hands began to ache from holding that heavy shield. Finally, after what felt like hours of practice, you and your fellow recruits were dismissed for breakfast. You moved through the lines, taking one of those stale loaves and a chunky piece of salted meat. The bread was hard and dry, almost sawdust-like in its texture. It crumbled easily between your fingers as you broke off small pieces to chew slowly. As you ate, soldiers began pouring into the mess tent with their own rations, everyone's faces marked by fatigue and the strain of a new day starting. A group of veterans sat together at one table, sharing stories and laughter that felt almost familiar despite having never met before. You watched them for a moment, wondering what it would take to fit in among these men. Feeling your own hunger grow alongside their conversations, you joined another soldier who was sitting alone by the wall. He nodded hello as if he'd known you were coming, and together you sat down to share your breakfast. His name was Aulus, a burly man with a beard that matched his gruff demeanor but also seemed kind-hearted. Aulus took a bite of bread and chewed thoughtfully before speaking again. "You'll get used to this," he said between mouthfuls. "Every morning will be like starting over. You seem experienced here," you commented, trying not to sound too eager for advice or reassurance. "I've been in the Legion long enough that I can still remember what it felt like when they first threw me into training," Aulus replied with a wry smile. "But now, it's just part of who I am." You nodded, feeling a small measure of comfort from his words. Maybe there was hope after all. Maybe you could learn to endure and thrive within this rigid structure. As the morning progressed, more recruits trickled in for their first full day as Legionaries. You watched them with a mix of curiosity and nervous anticipation. These were your peers, soon-to-be comrades, who would walk side by side through countless trials together. The Centurion's voice echoed across the camp around noon, his authoritative tone slicing through the usual chatter and commotion. "Attention!" Soldiers stopped what they were doing to turn toward their commander, a sense of respect and fear weighing heavily in the air. The Centurion stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over each recruit as if gauging our readiness for whatever lay ahead. "Today is your first day," he said firmly. "Make it count." The command resonated through you like an echo. Suddenly, everything seemed to matter more, every movement, every word, even the weight of that heavy shield on your shoulders. The pressure was intense, but somehow exhilarating too, a mix of fear and excitement bubbling up within. With a deep breath, you stepped forward alongside your new comrades, ready for whatever lay ahead in this crucible of training and transformation. With a deep breath, You stepped forward alongside your new comrades, ready for whatever lay ahead in this crucible of training and transformation. The weight of your pack was heavy on your shoulders, the leather straps digging into the skin beneath them as you adjusted to the sudden burden. You smelled it before you saw anything, a mixture of sweat, leather, and something sharper that hinted at metal and blood. It clung to every breath, an olfactory reminder of where this training ground stood in relation to the front lines. The sound of steel on stone echoed softly from afar, footsteps and the occasional hammering rhythmically punctuating the space between you and your future. The sun was high, but mercifully not too bright today. Its light cast long, sharp shadows over the courtyard where new recruits were gathered. You could feel it warming your face as you stepped into line with your comrades. The courtyard was a rough rectangle of bare earth, dotted with stumps of trees and scattered stones that had been left behind after the training facility's construction. Your hands found their way to the belt around your waist. It was thick leather, polished smooth by use over countless days. You ran them down its length, feeling the familiar weight of a dagger at the right hip and a water bottle on the left. The pouches were empty now, but soon they would be filled with provisions for your endurance trials. A soldier approached you from behind, his hand firm as he grabbed yours to test its strength. "You'll need every ounce," he muttered before letting go. His voice was rough, seasoned by years of service in the legions. You turned around, acknowledging him with a nod and a slight smile. The weight of your pack shifted again at this motion. The courtyard was alive now, filled not just with new recruits, but also instructors and experienced soldiers who were going through their own morning routines. They moved like shadows against the sunlight, each one carrying the quiet authority that only years in service could bestow. You watched them for a moment, broad shoulders, sun-tanned skin, arms thick from lifting heavy weights. A voice cut through your thoughts. "Third cohort," it called out sharply, "form up." It was a young officer, his face stern and unwavering beneath the helmet he wore. He had the look of someone who expected perfection in everything they did. You looked around quickly to see where you were supposed to stand. "Here," said another recruit next to you, nudging your shoulder gently with their own. "We're all from the same region, right?" You nodded, trying not to make too much noise as you straightened up and moved into position. The new recruits began to form ranks and files, a process that felt like it was stretching on forever, feet shuffling against each other in a way that made your toes ache. "First thing," the officer continued, his voice still sharp but now directed at everyone, "no one speaks of 3 words until they are told. Do you understand me?" His eyes scanned the ranks before settling on you and another recruit. You nodded again, swallowing hard as he went back to speaking. "Yes, sir," said a new voice from somewhere in line. It was too high-pitched, almost girlish, but it fit perfectly with their short stature and wide-eyed expression. The officer's gaze fell upon them, and they quickly ducked their heads, looking sheepish. "Good," the officer replied curtly before turning back to everyone else. "You are here today because you have shown promise. But being in a legion is not just about strength or skill, it's also about discipline." The courtyard was silent now as he spoke. The only sound came from the distant cawing of seagulls and the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot. 3 words, he repeated, are to be avoided at all costs. He paused for emphasis before continuing in a tone that left no room for question. No one ever speaks them out loud. You frowned slightly, your curiosity piqued, but not entirely clear on what these 3 words could possibly mean. The others around you seemed equally puzzled. Never say no way, never mention it can't be done, and most importantly, the officer's voice grew colder as he said this last part, never speak of I give up. He looked directly at you, his eyes piercing through your own. You felt a sudden chill, not from the light breeze that was blowing across the courtyard, but from something else, perhaps fear or perhaps just an unwelcome realization. Failure, the officer continued in a low voice, is unacceptable here. In a legion, you must persevere no matter what. The weight of your pack seemed to grow heavier with each word he spoke, as if it was absorbing his every syllable and echoing back inside your ears. You could feel your heart pounding softly against your ribcage. The sensation was both unsettling and strangely familiar. Remember this, the officer said finally, before turning on his heel and marching away without another word. The rest of the recruits watched him go, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. Well then, one recruit whispered to you, let's make sure we don't forget them. You nodded, glancing around at your new comrades, who were already starting to form pairs for the day's drills. They were all looking just as uncertain, but equally eager to prove themselves. The morning sun was now high enough that it bathed everything in a golden hue, lending an almost ethereal quality to the courtyard. Your hands found their way back to the dagger at your hip and the water bottle on your left side. You took one last deep breath before turning to face forward again. First things first, you muttered to yourself, remember those 3 words. As the training began in earnest that morning, you quickly learned what it meant to be part of a legion, not just physically, but mentally as well. The day stretched on like an endless series of drills and exercises, each one more demanding than the last. Your muscles screamed with every motion, push-ups, sprints, javelin throws, and your lungs burned for air. Yet amidst all this exertion, you clung to those 3 words that the officer had spoken so solemnly, no way, it can't be done, and I give up. They became a mantra of sorts, something to repeat silently whenever doubt threatened to overwhelm you. You kept them close, like talismans against failure. By midday, your body was drenched in sweat, leaving streaks on the ground beneath you as you performed endless laps around the courtyard. The sun beat down mercilessly through a clear blue sky, its warmth seeping into every fiber of your being until it felt almost suffocating. You were exhausted, but driven forward by an unseen force. At one point during lunch break, bread and cheese hastily stuffed between 2 fingers while standing in formation, you overheard another recruit muttering under his breath, I just can't do this anymore. The words hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of what was forbidden. You glanced sideways at him, but said nothing. Everyone had their own battles to fight. After lunch came more training, interspersed with periods where you could rest and catch your breath. But even then, the mental strain remained high, like carrying that invisible pack all day long. The courtyard seemed smaller now, tighter than before, as you moved through its confines, each step bringing closer those 3 forbidden words. As evening approached, the light began to fade, but not without casting elongated shadows across everything it touched. Shadows crept over faces and forms alike, adding a layer of mystery that made the place feel almost magical despite the harsh conditions within. The courtyard was quieter now too, fewer voices raised in command or exhortation, just the low murmur of tired muscles stretching themselves out. It was during this lull between activities when you finally had time to sit down and reflect on your day. You found a spot at one edge of the courtyard where patches of grass still showed through the worn earth beneath your seat. Here, away from the constant noise and activity, you could breathe more easily. You leaned back against a nearby tree stump, letting your eyes close briefly before opening them again to take in the scene around you. The sky was now painted with shades of orange and pink as day slowly transitioned into night. Stars were beginning to appear, twinkling like tiny beacons in an otherwise dark expanse above. You reached for another piece of bread from a nearby basket, taking small bites while savoring each one. Today had been grueling, but not entirely without its moments of triumph, like when you managed to hit the target with your javelin or performed more push-ups than anyone else during training. As you sat there, mulling over everything that had happened today, a sense of weariness began to settle within you. Your muscles felt like they were made of lead, and even breathing seemed hard work now. But amidst this exhaustion came an unexpected peace, a realization that perhaps those 3 words weren't just about avoiding failure. Maybe they also represented something deeper: perseverance. You looked up at the stars, their distant light piercing through the darkness overhead. They reminded you not only of hope, but of resilience, the ability to keep going no matter how difficult things might seem. With a final glance around the courtyard where so much had happened today, and yet remained unchanged in its essence, you stood slowly and began your journey back towards the barracks, ready for whatever lay ahead tomorrow. With a deep breath of stale sweat and horse manure that clung to your nostrils like an old friend, you stepped out into the courtyard once more. The sun was beginning its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the worn stone floor where footprints from earlier in the day remained. You could feel the slight chill of evening seeping through your tunic as you pulled it tighter around yourself. The courtyard had seen many a moment of triumph and despair today, but now all was quiet except for the soft creaking of wooden sandals against flagstones. Your feet padded heavily on the same worn path that countless legionaries before you had taken to their cells or to breakfast. The weight of your pack felt like an old friend too, a constant reminder of the day's struggles. You passed by the fountain where water once flowed freely, now a mere trickle in this arid land. The metal basin still shimmered with reflected light, but it was empty and silent, as if holding its breath for something that might never come back to life again. Your eyes drifted towards the distant barracks where your quarters lay, warm in contrast to the growing chill. The smell of cooking meat from the mess hall lingered faintly on the breeze, mingling with the sour scent of sweat and fear that no one talked about openly. You could almost taste it, the rich aroma of roasted pork mixed with the hint of garlic and herbs. It was a comfort, but also a reminder of how little you had to look forward to after this long day. Your gaze wandered towards the wall where the legionaries gathered at dusk for their daily report. The wooden platform stood as a stark contrast against the fading light, its surface worn smooth by countless hands that had come and gone. You could almost hear the murmurs of men who now slept in their cells, dreaming of home or battles to come. With each step back towards your quarters, you felt the weight of the day settling onto your shoulders once more. The courtyard was a place where stories were made and forgotten, a stage for daily dramas that repeated themselves like clockwork, but never quite aligned perfectly with history's grand narratives. You reached the entrance to the barracks at last, pushing open the heavy wooden doors that creaked against their hinges. Inside, the air was thick with heat and the faint smell of incense used to mask lingering odors. The torches flickered weakly along the walls, casting shadows on everything within. Your pack felt suddenly heavier as you set it down by the door, a small weight in your hands that represented all the things you had carried today, hopes, fears, and perhaps a little bit of yourself. You sat upon one of the hard wooden benches lining the room, pulling off your sandals to let them rest on the ground beneath you. The barracks was filled with men who seemed resigned to their fates, some dozing lightly while others whispered quietly or read from worn scrolls. The sound of breathing around you was a gentle symphony, each individual tune unique, yet part of this larger whole. You could feel your own breath growing slower as the night drew in its cloak. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting an amber glow across the room that illuminated everything, but also hid some things behind shadows. Its warmth spread like a comforting hand against the evening chill, and you found yourself leaning closer to it for both physical comfort and psychological solace. In this moment of quiet before your own bedroll was laid out, you could almost imagine what tomorrow might bring, another day of endless repetition, or perhaps something different altogether. But for now, there was only tonight, a mix of exhaustion and anticipation that made the future seem less daunting than it had in daylight hours. And so, with the weight of the day finally settled upon your shoulders and the warmth of the fire pulling you towards sleep, you closed your eyes, ready to drift into dreams that might just hold some answers about why you wouldn't last a single day in a Roman legion. In your dreams, you found yourself once again amidst the clamor and chaos that seemed to define every waking moment, only this time it was even more vivid than before. The smell of sweat mingled with fear, and an underlying stench of death hung heavy in the air around you, a constant reminder of the harsh realities of Roman military life. You were back in the barracks, where men grunted as they dragged their weary bodies towards bed after yet another relentless day. The walls of your makeshift room seemed to close in on you, and the sound of snoring filled the space, men who had already succumbed to sleep, while others still struggled with the horrors that haunted them. You saw faces from back home, a wife whose worried gaze now appeared more concerned about survival than love, a child who no longer clung to your leg for safety, but instead cowered in fear of the unknown dangers lurking around every corner. As you lay there, the dream shifted slightly, and suddenly you found yourself on the battlefield. The sky was painted with blood-red hues as day turned into night during another brutal engagement. Shouts echoed from all directions, a cacophony of orders that seemed to drown out reason and common sense. Men fell around you, their screams mingling with the metallic tang of iron against flesh. You tried to move forward, but found yourself stuck in an endless cycle, fighting not only your enemies, but also the unyielding weight of discipline imposed by centurions and officers alike. Each order felt like a punch to the gut, Keep moving. No room for fear here. Keep going. You stumbled over dead bodies and broken weapons, each step bringing you closer to that final moment when everything seemed to blur together in an overwhelming sense of futility. In this dream, there was no escape. No soft bed awaited at dawn, only more battles, more deaths, more pain. It felt like time had stopped entirely, stretching out into eternity as the relentless march continued. Yet within this endless loop, you noticed something peculiar, small moments of humanity amidst the chaos. A hand reaching out to help another man, whispered promises of survival that no one dared believe. When dawn finally broke in your dream, bringing with it the harsh light and the realization that yet another day had passed, you woke up gasping for air. The warmth from the fire still lingered on your face, as if trying to comfort you after such a vivid nightmare. Outside, the real world awaited, a world where reality would soon test those very promises of survival. You rubbed at your eyes and stood slowly, stretching out limbs that felt heavy with exhaustion. The room was quiet now, save for the occasional crackle of dying embers from the fire. You walked to the window, its panes fogged over by the heat inside, and looked outside into the night. Stars flickered in the sky above, a celestial reminder of how small your place might be within this vast world. The realization hit you hard. This was why you wouldn't last a day in a Roman legion. Not just because of fear or death or even sheer brutality, but perhaps more importantly, because it wasn't about survival at all. It was about something far deeper and darker, a constant struggle against the very nature of humanity under such extreme conditions. You returned to your bedroll with newfound resolve. Tonight, you would find a way to prepare yourself better for what lay ahead, not just physically, but mentally as well. For tomorrow brought another day filled not only with battles, but also with moments like these, moments that could make all the difference between enduring and falling. In the silence that enveloped him after his thoughts settled into the quiet resolve, Ares felt the familiar weight of his armor settling over him like an old friend. He reached out to touch it, first the heavy leather of the cuirass, then the intricate ironwork of the greaves and pauldrons. Each piece had seen countless battles, carried by hands that no longer wore them. The scent of sweat, fear, and death clung to every surface, a memento from his own past glories. Ares stood there for what felt like an eternity, letting the weight and smell of battle wash over him. It was as if he could almost see the ghosts of soldiers who had fought in these very fortifications centuries ago, their faces etched into the walls, their stories woven into every stone. The air hummed with a barely perceptible tension that spoke to his own readiness for tomorrow. He turned and looked out over the legion's encampment. Fires flickered like tiny stars against the twilight sky, casting long shadows across rows of tents. Legionaries moved about in small groups, some whispering amongst themselves, others tending to their horses or sharpening tools by torchlight. The sound of metal ringing against stone from a nearby forge mingled with the occasional snore of a soldier seeking rest. Ares approached one such tent, drawn like a moth to the flame of curiosity. As he pushed aside the flap and stepped inside, he was greeted not just by darkness, but by an overwhelming sense of camaraderie. There were 5 men huddled around a small fire, each with their own armor and weapons laid out on the ground before them. They looked up as Ares entered, eyes wide in surprise at his intrusion. "Legio," one man said, nodding respectfully. "You came to see us off." Ares nodded back, feeling the weight of his decision settling further into him with each word he spoke. "I did." The men shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny, clearly aware that their training and experience had not prepared them for this day as well as it should have. "We do what we can," another man offered quietly, running a hand through his tousled hair. He was a seasoned veteran with deep lines carved into his face, the kind of weariness only long years in battle could bring. "But these days..." They talk about the Empire like it's something you can't hold onto anymore. Ares listened as the men shared stories and fears, their voices blending into an uneasy tapestry that was both familiar and alien to him. It seemed every soldier had a story of loss or hardship, each one adding another layer to his understanding of what lay ahead. "Tonight," Ares said softly, his voice cutting through the murmur like a knife, "we train as hard as we can for tomorrow." The men fell silent, their eyes widening in recognition. They knew well enough that training was crucial, no matter how many stories they had heard or battles fought before. And yet there remained an unspoken fear, a quiet desperation to simply survive the day. "Tomorrow," Ares continued, his voice firm and unwavering, "we face whatever comes with steel in our hands and honor in our hearts." The men exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from doubt to determination as they nodded resolutely. The fire crackled and spat sparks into the night air, casting a flickering glow that seemed almost supernatural against the encroaching darkness. Ares turned away, leaving them there with the comfort of shared experience and resolve. As he stepped back out into the cool evening breeze, he felt an odd sense of connection to these men who knew what it was like to fight for survival in a world where battles were not just for glory, but for life itself. He walked among the soldiers, noting their preparations, the sharpening blades, the last-minute adjustments made on armor. Each action seemed deliberate and purposeful, an attempt at finding comfort or control amidst uncertainty. Ares realized that tonight was as much about them as it was about him, about all of them facing tomorrow together. As he reached his own tent, Ares paused to draw a deep breath. The smell of sweat, fear, and death had followed him out here, but so too had the quiet strength born from shared experience. He stepped inside, closing the flap behind him with a decisive click. Within moments, the scent of leather and metal mingled with something new, firewood burning in his makeshift hearth. Ares lay down on his pallet, eyes fixed upon the flickering light above. The shadows danced across the walls, casting eerie patterns that seemed to mock the stillness he craved. Sleep eluded him for a long while, haunted by thoughts of battles yet to be fought and lives lost in their wake. Yet amidst the turmoil, one thought remained clear. Tomorrow was only as uncertain as they allowed it to be. And with this realization came an unexpected peace. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, both those that could be anticipated and those that were utterly unforeseen. But tonight, Ares vowed to meet them all head-on, not just for his sake, but for the sake of every man who looked up at him now. With a silent prayer for strength and courage, he closed his eyes and let sleep finally claim him, along with the dreams that would shape their fates in ways they could only begin to imagine. The weight of the wooden plowshare pressed heavily into his hand, grounding him to the earth with its rough texture and steady pressure. The sun had begun its slow descent in a sky painted with streaks of orange and pink, setting the edges of the Legion's encampment ablaze like molten copper. A gentle breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine needles mixed with damp soil, a subtle yet constant reminder that this was not just an endless expanse of stone and sand. He gripped the plowshare tightly, his knuckles turning white as he fought against the fatigue gnawing at him from a day's labor. Sweat mingled with dust on his brow, tracing small rivulets down to the collar of his tunic, where it clung to the fabric like tiny shadows. He could hear the creaks and groans of the wooden plow as he pushed through the soil, each movement bringing him closer to the end of this long day's work. A nearby legionary called out a cheerful greeting, breaking the quiet. "Tertius. Ready for your evening break? Come share some warm broth with me." His name in such casual tones felt almost foreign on his lips. He had become so accustomed to silence that even friendly voices jarred him. He nodded absently and continued plowing, half listening as his colleague approached. "Ah, you look like a ghost," the other man said, eyeing Tertius with a mixture of concern and amusement. "You should come over for some broth, it'll do wonders." Tertius turned slightly, just enough to see his friend's broad back and strong arms at work nearby. He felt an involuntary tug toward warmth and comfort, though he knew well the futility in seeking relief from such small comforts. "Thanks, Varus," Tertius replied softly, without much enthusiasm. "I'll stick with this for now." Varus nodded understandingly as he dug a shallow trench to plant his own share of vegetables. The two men worked in companionable silence until the earth seemed almost reluctant to part before them, yielding enough space to accommodate their evening's repast. As they finished up and made their way back towards camp, the smell of cooking food began to waft through the air, primarily cabbage, with a hint of garlic that hinted at something more. The aroma was both familiar and tantalizing, stirring his stomach into an uneasy rumble. They passed by the Legion's communal hearth, where the fire crackled and popped, casting long shadows across the dirt floor. A few men sat around it, their voices mingling with the sound of clashing metal as they practiced swordsmanship or repaired armor. The air was thick with the scent of wood, smoke, and sweat, a heady mix that settled in his nostrils like an old friend. Tertius joined Varus at one end of the hearth, where a pot simmered on 3 stones, its contents bubbling gently beneath the flames. He picked up a wooden spoon and stirred, feeling it slide through the broth with almost languid ease. The vegetables swirled lazily in their watery embrace, giving off an earthy fragrance that spoke to him of home. Varus sat down beside him, his presence steady as he waited for Tertius to speak first. "You'll never guess what I found today," Varus said with a mischievous grin. He leaned in close and whispered, "A hidden cave near the edge of our camp. It's perfect for storing extra supplies." Tertius couldn't help but chuckle, though it felt forced. The excitement was welcome, yet his spirits remained subdued by the weight of daily toil. "Sounds like something you'd find," he said, with a playful roll of eyes. Varus snorted in agreement before gesturing towards the hearth, where a small crowd had begun to gather. "Well, if we're lucky enough to get some extra rations tonight, I'll show it to everyone tomorrow." The idea brought him back to his earlier contemplation about the barracks facing east, a mystery that continued to elude understanding despite repeated attempts at unraveling its purpose. Tertius glanced up towards the eastern horizon, where a sliver of daylight lingered stubbornly against the encroaching night. The sky seemed to stretch endlessly, filled with stars that twinkled like distant fireflies. He could almost hear the whisperings of ancient gods in their silent chorus, guardians perhaps, or mere spectators. His thoughts turned inward as he considered why they built barracks facing east. It was a question so simple and yet so complex. There were no grand answers here, only small puzzles waiting to be pieced together by those who dared look closely enough. What if the location of these barracks held more than just practical significance? Could there be some deeper meaning hidden within their positioning? He stirred his broth once more, watching as it swirled and mingled with its contents. The act was almost meditative, a small ritual he performed every evening to mark time and bring him back from the edge of daydreaming. Varus nudged him gently, breaking into his reverie. "Are you listening?" "I said we should start planning our next training session." Tertius blinked away his musings, turning his attention fully towards Varus. "Ah, right, training." He nodded slowly as the reality of their day-to-day routine began to settle around him again. The fire continued to crackle and pop, casting flickering shadows across faces that now seemed more weary than before. The broth was growing cold in Tertius's bowl, its taste a mere shadow of what it had been moments ago. Yet even as he slurped the last few spoonfuls, leaving his bowl mostly empty, there remained an unspoken hope for something, anything, that would lift him out of this perpetual cycle. As night deepened and the coolness of evening seeped into their bones, Tertius found himself pondering once again why they built barracks facing east. Perhaps it was a matter of practicality after all, the rising sun casting light upon them as dawn arrived, yet something nagged at him, urging him to seek an answer beyond simple explanations. The last embers of the fire flickered and died down, leaving behind only the faint glow of coals. The silence that followed seemed heavier than usual, charged with unspoken questions and lingering thoughts. Tertius shifted in his chair, feeling a mix of tiredness and restless curiosity settling over him like a heavy blanket. He reached out to Varus, who was already standing, ready to retire for the night. "I'll see you tomorrow at dawn," he said softly. Varus nodded, his eyes reflecting the same weariness that Tertius felt. Together they rose from their seats and made their way through the encampment towards their respective tents. The weight of the day pressed down upon them both as they walked in unspoken synchronization, each step a reminder of the countless days yet to come. Tent pegs were driven into the ground, canvas flaps pulled tight against the cold night air. As Tertius settled onto his mat inside, he allowed himself one last glance at Varus, who stood by the entrance, his form silhouetted against the dim light filtering through a crack in the fabric. "Good night," Tertius called out softly before pulling the flap closed over him. Inside, darkness enveloped everything but the faintest hint of starlight that filtered through. He lay down on his mat, feeling the hard ground beneath and the roughness of the blanket against his skin. Sleep came slowly, its tendrils reaching for him like a ghostly hand in the cool night air. With a silent prayer for strength and courage, he closed his eyes and let sleep finally claim him, along with the dreams that would shape their fates in ways they could only begin to imagine. The dawn broke with a soft whisper that seemed to carry through his dreams, slowly pulling him back into reality. As he stirred from sleep's embrace, the cool morning air seeped under his tunic, and he stretched out, feeling the stiffness of unaccustomed bed rest. He looked around the simple quarters, his gaze landing on the eastern-facing wall that dominated one side of their barrack room. The light filtering through a small window above the door painted everything in hues of gold and orange, signaling the start of another day under the watchful eye of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. The wooden floor creaked softly as he rose to his feet, his mind already racing with thoughts about what lay ahead. Today was different. Today brought new challenges that promised to test their resolve. He made his way across the room to where a small fire pit stood, its coals embers now, remnants of last night's warmth. He pulled out a piece of hard bread from one of the communal baskets and tore off a chunk before heading outside into the courtyard where other legionaries were already at work, preparing for the day. The barracks facing east was more than just a strategic choice. It held significance in their daily lives. The eastern light brought with it not only warmth, but also hope, symbolizing new beginnings and the promise of victory over the enemy that always seemed to lurk on distant horizons. Legionaries often whispered about how the sun's rays were a reminder of the emperor's favor they desperately needed after so many months without good news from Rome. As he joined his comrades in organizing their equipment, the sound of trumpets and drums filled the air, signaling roll call. The Centurion's voice echoed through the courtyard, sharp and authoritative, as names were called out with a mix of familiarity and tension. Today was the day of the inspection, a rare honor granted to their cohort by the legate himself. The legionaries moved in unison, each following his duties without question or hesitation. The armor clinked against metal, shields scraped together, and sandals thumped on stone as they prepared for formation. The air buzzed with a sense of anticipation that was both exhilarating and daunting. Just as the last soldier fell into place, there came a sharp command, "Stand at ease." The Centurion stepped forward, his stance imposing yet fair. He addressed them in a voice that carried not just authority, but also respect for their efforts. "Today," he began, his eyes scanning each face, "we show the world what it means to be a Roman legionary." A murmur of approval rippled through the ranks as they listened intently. The Centurion's words were clear and concise. "We stand here not just to defend our homeland, but also to uphold the glory of Rome, no matter where we may serve or how long we must endure." The inspection was thorough yet swift. Each soldier was assessed on his readiness for battle, the sharpness of his weapon, the condition of his armor, even the state of his clothing. It was a ritual that reinforced discipline and unity among them, reminding everyone that their collective strength lay in every individual's dedication. As the inspection concluded, with a resounding cheer from the legionaries, the Centurion turned to address the gathering once more. "Remember this day," he said, his voice resonating through the courtyard. "For it is not just an exercise, but a reflection of our commitment, our resolve to protect and serve." With those words echoing in their minds, they returned to their duties with renewed vigor. The eastern-facing barracks seemed less daunting now, their position no longer merely strategic, but imbued with purpose and pride. As the day progressed under the relentless sun, the legionaries worked tirelessly, each task completed with a sense of camaraderie that bound them together more tightly than any chains could. For in this shared struggle lay not just survival, but also hope, hope for a better tomorrow, no matter how distant or uncertain it might seem. And so, as night once again approached, and sleep overcame him against his skin, he closed his eyes, the memories of today's inspection still fresh. He whispered silently to himself, "Tomorrow we stand strong," before allowing dreams to take hold, dreams that promised not just victory, but also a glimpse into the enduring legacy they were building in this distant land. In these dreams, he saw the barracks facing east with its golden light, and heard the drums of Rome echoing across time. He knew then that their fates were intertwined with those of every soldier who had worn this uniform before them, and perhaps one day, as they faced whatever challenges lay ahead, they would find themselves standing once more under the watchful gaze of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, ready to shape history in ways only a Roman legion could. The smell of wet earth and damp stone greeted you, heavy with an undercurrent of something rotting beneath the surface, a forgotten trench in the ancient Roman legionary camp, its walls lined with wooden planks that creaked softly as a breeze whispered through them. The air was thick with dust from the years-long abandonment, yet still held hints of sweat and salt, remnants of soldiers' exertions long past. Your hands gripped the cold iron handle of your trowel, heavy in your palm, its weight grounding you to this spot. You knelt down carefully, placing it aside to reach for a delicate brush, fingers tracing the texture of the rough leather tied around it. The trench was no more than 3 feet deep, but each layer held stories, secrets, and perhaps even a few lies waiting to be uncovered. The light here was dim, filtered through the overhanging branches of nearby trees that seemed almost to reach out with gnarled fingers, as if trying to claim this space for their own. The shadow played tricks on your eyes, stretching and shrinking the contours of the trench like an animated puppet show. You closed your eyes momentarily, letting the quiet here wash over you, a peace not often found in the clamor of modern life. When you opened them again, a small piece of pottery caught your eye, half buried just below the surface where you had stopped brushing. Its shape was familiar, likely a fragment from an oil lamp or perhaps a cup once used for water. Your heart fluttered with excitement at such a find. It felt like a tangible connection to those who walked these very grounds centuries ago. As your brush swept over, another small object emerged, a piece of corroded iron, barely recognizable as anything but metal that had seen better days. You picked it up gently, the cold metal bite sharp against your fingers. It was likely part of some soldier's equipment, perhaps a nail from their armor, or perhaps something more mundane like a hinge from an old door. Whatever its origin, this piece held a weighty story, just as heavy for you to bear now. You set it down with care and resumed your brushing, the rhythmic motion almost soothing in its familiarity. The trench around you seemed to stretch on forever, each layer holding more secrets than could be counted. You felt like a miner of sorts, panning through centuries rather than searching for gold in the earth. The sound of crickets chirping softly in the distance provided a background hum, punctuated occasionally by the distant rustle of leaves or the occasional fluttering of unseen wings. It was here that you felt truly alive, connected to both this moment and all those who had walked these paths before you. A small pile of dirt now lay at your feet, carefully sifted through with care, each grain a potential clue waiting to be uncovered. You reached for your trowel again, lifting it up as if cradling an old friend. Its handle felt familiar under your grip, the metal smooth and worn from years of use. The trench was not just any place. It was a window into history, a tangible connection to those who had built this empire on their backs. You could almost see them now, men in armor, faces grim with purpose as they dug these very trenches. Their stories were here buried deep, but waiting to be told. You found another fragment of pottery, more delicate than the last and clearly part of a plate or bowl. Your fingers traced its shape carefully before setting it aside for later examination. Each piece mattered, each fragment was a puzzle piece in the larger picture that lay ahead. The trench itself seemed almost alive here, as if responding to your gentle probing with secrets only now ready to be shared. Shadows danced playfully across the surface of the dirt you brushed away, their patterns shifting like whispers of ancient tales. As you continued your work, you couldn't help but wonder what other stories lay hidden beneath these layers. What hardships had these soldiers faced? What victories did they celebrate? And what lies might they have told themselves to keep going when all seemed lost? The trench was a physical reminder that even in the face of such grand history, small moments matter. It was here that you felt both insignificant, a mere speck of dust, and integral, part of something far greater than yourself. Your muscles started to ache from hours on your knees, and you leaned back slightly, stretching out. The cool air seemed to seep into every fiber of your being, refreshing, but also reminding you of the work yet to be done. You took a deep breath, inhaling that damp, earthy scent mixed with something more complex, a blend of history and mystery. As you worked on, another piece emerged, a small tile from an old roof or floor, its surface now worn smooth by time. It was likely part of some soldier's quarters, perhaps even the very place where they had slept during their long campaigns. The thought sent a shiver down your spine. Imagine lying in that exact spot, knowing you were just one link in this endless chain of Roman legionaries. The trench continued to yield its secrets slowly, but surely, each discovery adding another layer to the story that unfolded before you. You felt like a guardian of history, not just uncovering truths, but preserving them for future generations who might never set foot on these grounds themselves. As evening began to settle in, casting long shadows through the trees and dimming the light further, your work slowed naturally. The trench was not just any task, it was an act of reverence, a dedication to understanding those who came before you. You knew then that each piece mattered, not for its grandness, but because every fragment told a story. And as you stood up finally, brushing off your knees and straightening out, the weight of what you had uncovered felt both humbling and exhilarating all at once. The trench was more than just dirt. It was a portal into an ancient world, filled with triumphs, failures, loves, and losses that shaped not only individual lives, but entire civilizations. And in uncovering these stories bit by bit, you found yourself part of something far greater, a legacy of discovery and respect for those who had walked this earth long before us. As the day drew to a close, You knew your work here was just beginning, each piece waiting patiently to be pieced together into a larger narrative. The trench held not only answers, but also questions, riddles that would keep historians like yourself busy for years to come. With the sun sinking lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the trench and highlighting the intricate layers of history it held, you stepped back to survey your work for the day. The site was a testament to the resilience of human civilization, each layer telling its own tale of triumphs and struggles, prosperity and decline. Today's findings had provided significant insights into daily life in the Roman legion. Fragments of pottery hinted at local trade networks. Remnants of military equipment suggested advanced combat tactics, and inscriptions carved on stone tablets offered glimpses into personal histories. As you carefully documented each piece, your mind wandered to what lay ahead for these artifacts. In a museum or scholarly journal, they might one day form the basis of discussions about Roman legions' impact on the region. Yet their real value would be in how future archaeologists and historians interpreted them, a testament not just to our past, but also to human curiosity. The trench itself was a marvel of preservation, layers undisturbed for centuries by natural events or human intervention. Each stratum held stories waiting to unfold, tales of the soldiers who marched through these lands millennia ago. The artifacts you found were more than relics. They represented lifelines connecting us to those distant times. They spoke of bravery, camaraderie, and perhaps even moments of quiet contemplation amidst the chaos of battle. But as promising as today's discoveries seemed, they also posed new questions. Why had these items been discarded here? Were soldiers dumping supplies during a retreat, or were they simply careless in their daily routines? The answers to such queries could rewrite parts of our historical narrative, revealing both common practices and extraordinary circumstances that shaped the lives of Roman legionaries. Your thoughts turned from speculation to practicality as you began to prepare for tomorrow's work. Carefully packing up your tools, you noted which areas remained unexplored and what new techniques might yield further insights. It was a painstaking process, one that required meticulous attention to detail but also creative leaps in interpretation. The potential rewards were immense. Each piece of evidence brought us closer to understanding the lives of ancient Romans. As night fell across the site, casting an eerie light on your work, you felt a profound connection to those who came before you. Their struggles and triumphs echoed through time, resonating with modern challenges and aspirations. The task ahead was immense, piecing together fragments into coherent narratives, but it also promised endless intrigue and discovery. Tomorrow brought new hopes and uncertainties. Another day in the trenches awaited, filled with both promise and peril. Yet, as you gazed out at the horizon where sky met earth, there was a sense of purpose. Each layer uncovered not only added to our collective knowledge, but enriched the tapestry of human history, a reminder that understanding our past is crucial for shaping our future. With these thoughts in mind, you called it quits for the day. As you packed up your gear and prepared to leave, you couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. The site held many stories still waiting to be told, stories that promise to challenge existing narratives and offer fresh perspectives on one of history's most influential empires. The scent of dry earth and decaying leaves clung to your nostrils like a thick fog, muffled by the low hum of countless voices. The warm sun beat down on you, its rays tangling with the fine particles of dust that swirled in the air. You squinted against this bright light as you stepped into the vast expanse before you, a field strewn with stones and broken pottery, where the scent of earth mixed strangely with something faintly metallic, like old coins rusting. The weight of your pack pressed heavily on your shoulders, flaxen linen cloaks, coarse wool tunics, leather sandals, and you sighed softly. This was just another day in the Legion. But today felt different. This site held many stories still waiting to be told, stories that promised to challenge existing narratives and offer fresh perspectives on one of history's most influential empires. You approached a small cluster of soldiers who stood by a low stone wall, their faces buried in scrolls or talking animatedly with each other. The sound of leather sandals scraping against the hard-packed dirt filled your ears as you drew closer. One soldier, a tall man with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see through everything, looked up at you expectantly. "Good morning, recruit," he said, his voice low but clear. "You've made it here in one piece. That's more than can be said for many." The recruit part of your mind woke up then, though the rest remained heavy with sleep. You straightened your back and cleared your throat before responding. "Morning, Centurion," you replied, trying to sound sharp despite the weight still dragging at your limbs. "What do we need to know?" Centurion Gracchus nodded once, his eyes flicking over the site as if gauging its secrets. He turned back to face you and began speaking in a measured tone. "This is the site of Versailles," he said. "A battlefield where one of Rome's greatest victories was won centuries ago." Your mind wandered briefly, trying to conjure up images from history lessons long forgotten. But here, amidst the remnants of this ancient battle, it all felt so real and tangible. Stones that had seen bloodshed, earth that held tales of the past. Gracchus continued, his voice steady as he led you through a brief recitation. The consul Gaius Marius commanded these legions. They faced off against a formidable Gallic army under Brennus's command. By the end, Rome emerged victorious, but at what cost? You could feel your gaze drifting towards one particular stone, a large slab partially buried in the earth, its surface smooth with age and weathering. The texture was cool beneath your fingers as you reached out to touch it. Isn't this just another story of conquest? You wondered aloud, more to yourself than anyone else. Of Roman greatness and Gallic defeat. Gracchus's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of amusement in his expression. He didn't need to say anything. The weight of your pack seemed heavier, as if it were laden with all the stories this site was eager to tell. "Conquest is one thing," he said finally, his voice softer now. "But what of those who fought? What do their bones and blood mean in light of history's grand narratives?" You turned back towards him, finding a small smile on your face as you realized how absurd it all seemed. This site where the past lay buried beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. "And here I am," you said, lifting your pack off one shoulder. "Heavy with responsibility and curiosity." Gracchus nodded in agreement. "Exactly so." He gestured towards a nearby tree trunk, its rough bark scratching against your palm as you leaned into it for support. The sun continued to beat down mercilessly, causing beads of sweat to form on the back of your neck. "Today," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the heat and humidity, "we dig." You watched as he handed over a small spade, its handle smooth under your fingers despite hours in the sun. The tool felt familiar yet strange, a reminder that these were not just stories, but real people with names, families, dreams. "Let's see what lies beneath," you replied, feeling suddenly lighter, as if some of the burden had shifted from your shoulders to this simple act of digging into the earth. The dirt was dry and gritty between your fingers, caked onto the spade like a thin layer of powder. Each scoop revealed more stones, more pottery, more secrets waiting to be unearthed. The heat became almost unbearable as you dug deeper, the soil beneath growing cooler with each shovelful. Centurion Gracchus watched over your shoulder, his expression serious but not unkind. He offered occasional guidance or encouragement when needed, but mostly let you work in silence. Every now and then, a small object would emerge, something like an amphora fragment or a coin, and both of you would pause to examine it closely. As the afternoon wore on, shadows began lengthening across the site, casting long lines over your legs and arms. The heat started to wane slightly as well, though still oppressive in its own way. The air grew heavy with dust and sweat, making each breath feel like a struggle. Yet there was an odd comfort here too, this shared labor, this common goal. You found yourself digging more deeply now, your movements becoming more deliberate as you searched for something specific, pieces of the past that could tell their own stories without needing to fit into any grand narrative. It wasn't just about uncovering remains. It was about finding those small, individual moments that made up history itself, moments where people lived and breathed, laughed and died. The sun dipped lower in the sky now, casting long shadows across everything in its path. The earth grew damp under your hands as you worked through layers of soil, each layer telling a different story. You found more coins and broken pottery, fragments of armor, small tools, all pieces of lives lived centuries ago. As you reached into another hole, your fingers brushed against something cold and hard, a piece of metal embedded in the dirt. Carefully lifting it out, you saw that it was a coin, Rome's denarius, its edges worn smooth by time but still recognizable. In your hand now, this tiny relic held power beyond measure. It connected you to those who had lived here before. The sound of scraping and digging continued around you as others joined in the work, their tools clinking against each other rhythmically. The air hummed with activity and purpose, yet there was also a quiet reverence for what lay beneath, the weight of history pressing down on all of you even while you worked to uncover its secrets. As night fell over the site, casting everything into shadow, you sat back on your heels, letting your pack rest against your chest. The air grew cooler now, though still heavy with humidity. Stars began appearing in the sky above, bright points of light amidst the darkening expanse. You looked up at them, feeling a strange sense of connection to those who had once gazed upon these same stars. Centurion Gracchus approached then, his face marked by exhaustion but also something like pride. He handed you another coin, similar in design yet different enough to catch your eye. It was not just a memento, it was a reminder that history is made up of countless individual stories, stories that may challenge existing narratives but still hold profound meaning. "Take these coins," he said softly. They're yours now, to keep or discard as you see fit. You accepted them, feeling the weight of both their literal heaviness and symbolic significance in your palm. These weren't just relics, they were a testament to those who had come before, people like yourself, but living in very different times. With that, Gracchus turned back towards his own tasks, leaving you alone with your thoughts amidst the cool darkness of evening. The site held many stories still waiting to be told, stories that promised to challenge existing narratives and offer fresh perspectives on one of history's most influential empires. But for now, as you sat there beneath a blanket of stars, those stories felt both closer and more distant than ever before. The weight of your pack began shifting once again, this time not just from the physical load, but also the newfound understanding that lay within it, layers upon layers of human experience waiting to be uncovered. As you prepared to leave for the night, you couldn't help but wonder what other secrets might still remain hidden beneath these ancient stones. The air grew cool as darkness fully settled in around you. The distant sounds of digging and talking faded into a gentle hum before eventually falling silent altogether. You stood up slowly, brushing off your cloak and straightening your back one last time. With that final stretch, the weight seemed to lift from not just your shoulders, but also from within, ready now for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Leaving behind only the faint scent of earth and the lingering warmth of the day's work, you walked away under a canopy of stars, each step lighter than it had been earlier. The site held many stories still waiting to be told, and tonight, as you prepared to sleep in your small camp nearby, those stories began whispering softly into your dreams, promising adventures yet untold and secrets ripe for discovery. And with that thought, the weight of everything lay gently on your heart, ready to carry forward through another day in this ever-unfolding tale. The soft rustle of leaves underfoot mingles with the distant murmur of voices in the night air, a symphony that seems to whisper secrets of the past through the cool evening breeze. The weight of your pack presses gently against your shoulders, its leather straps digging into your skin just enough to remind you of the long day's work ahead. Your fingers curl around the handles of two wooden buckets filled with water from the nearby stream. Each step is deliberate and slow, guided by the rhythmic sound of water sloshing inside them. You pause for a moment, looking up at the starlit sky above, a tapestry of countless points of light that seem to wink down upon you in silent camaraderie. The air smells faintly of pine needles and earth, with an undercurrent of dampness that clings to your tunic as you breathe deeply. The temperature is cool, but not too cold. It's the perfect chill after a hot day spent marching or training. Your mind drifts back to earlier in the day, when the sun had risen high enough to cast long shadows across the camp. You remember how the legionaries around you grumbled about yet another drill, a formation run that had stretched into what felt like eternity. Each step had been heavy and unyielding under your sandals, each command a reminder of discipline at its most oppressive. By the time the sergeant's whistle finally blew to signal rest, you were ready for nothing more than the quiet embrace of sleep. Now here you are again, after only brief respite from the night watch, tasked with fetching water before dawn breaks completely. The task is mundane and expected, yet it carries a weight that feels almost unbearable, the constant reminder that in this life, even simple tasks can become burdensome when the hours stretch endlessly ahead of you. As you make your way to the stream, the ground underfoot becomes uneven, a patchwork quilt of stones and dirt. Each step is careful, each misstep a small stumble that serves as a gentle rebuke for your fatigue. The sound of water lapping at the shore grows louder with every stride until it fills your ears completely, cool, clear liquid that seems to mock you in its purity. You reach down and dip one bucket into the stream, feeling the weight shift slightly as the water rises inside. It's a simple act, but one that feels fraught with meaning, a small victory over the day that looms before you like an unyielding fortress. The other bucket fills easily after that first dip, its handle catching your thumb and forefinger just so. As you turn to make your way back up the hill towards camp, you can feel the weight of everything, of this relentless march through a world where every moment is scrutinized for compliance, of the daily grind of tasks, both menial and significant, all pressing down on you. It's an odd sensation, this quiet burden that seems to grow heavier with each step, like a stone that grows in size as it settles deep into your chest. The path ahead is illuminated only by starlight, faint but guiding enough for the trained eye of a legionary. The air is still, save for the gentle lapping of water and the distant hush of night creatures moving through their own unseen business. There's an almost sacred quality to this moment, the quietness that precedes change, the calm before the storm. You continue your ascent, each step deliberate and mindful. The weight of your pack grows heavier with every meter you climb, a silent reminder of the day's demands laid upon you. Your breath comes in short gasps now, mingling with the night air to create an ethereal sound that echoes through the stillness of early morning. At last, you reach the top and set down the buckets at your feet. The act is almost ritualistic, a small moment of rest before the day truly begins. You lean back against a sturdy oak tree, its bark rough under your fingers as you take in a deep breath of cooler air. The weight on your heart seems to shift then, less a burden than an anchor, grounding you firmly in this place and time. As dawn breaks over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink that seem almost mocking against the stark reality before you, you realize just how fragile these moments can be. Each one holds within it both the promise of hope and the looming threat of what lies ahead. But for now, in this quiet, early morning hour, all is still, save for the faint hum of life stirring around you. And with that thought, the weight of everything lay gently on your heart, ready to carry forward through another day in this ever-unfolding tale. As dawn painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, the legionary stirred from his uneasy slumber. The world outside was beginning to awaken. Birds sang their early morning chorus, and distant calls echoed through the encampment as men roused themselves for another day's work. But in his heart there lay a heavy burden, visions of battles lost and won, dreams of home and family intertwined with the grim reality that tomorrow might not be like any other. The silence was thick. It clung to him like an unyielding shroud as he sat up slowly, stretching his stiff limbs. His mind raced through scenarios from last night's restless sleep, the enemy closing in, reinforcements faltering, and the ever-present specter of death lurking just beyond the horizon. The thought sent a chill down his spine, despite the warmth of the rising sun. He glanced at the makeshift tent flap, seeing its shadow cast by the slanting light, so familiar yet now tinged with an unfamiliar dread. With each breath, he felt more and more exposed, as if every eye in the encampment was upon him, waiting for his next move. He knew that in this moment of introspection lay not only the seed of doubt, but also the potential for strength. "Brother," a familiar voice called from outside, breaking through his contemplation. His comrade, Marcus, stood just beyond the tent flap, his armor gleaming with early morning dew. "Are you ready to face another day?" The legionary forced a smile and nodded weakly. Yes, I am." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've faced harder days than these before," he said softly. With that simple statement, the weight of his thoughts seemed momentarily lifted. He followed Marcus out into the encampment where other legionaries were already at work, assembling equipment and preparing for the day's march. The camaraderie in their eyes was a balm to his troubled mind. Each man knew he would not be alone. As they moved through ranks of soldiers, there was an undercurrent of tension, a reminder that each step brought them closer to whatever fate had prepared for them. Yet amidst this unease lay a strange solidarity. These men were bound by more than just duty. They shared the same fears and hopes, their bonds forged in blood and sweat. The morning drill commenced with precision drills and rigorous training exercises. The sound of metal clashing against metal filled his ears as he clashed swords with his fellow legionaries, each strike echoing through the encampment like a heartbeat. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes, but there was an almost meditative quality to it. In those moments, he could forget about everything else and focus solely on the task at hand. Afternoons brought more training sessions interspersed, with brief reprieves during which they shared stories around a crackling fire or played simple games. These were not just breaks from their duties, but vital moments of human connection amidst the rigid structure of military life. Here, in these fleeting glimpses of normalcy, he found small solace. Evenings saw them gather once more for communal meals, often under a sky painted with stars so bright they seemed almost within reach. Stories and laughter filled the air until late into the night, when most would retire to their tents or hammocks. It was here that true camaraderie blossomed. It wasn't just about shared hardship, but mutual support in moments of joy as well. Yet, even after such days, the weight never truly left his heart. For though he found comfort among these men and amidst these familiar routines, there remained an unspoken understanding that this was only temporary, momentary reprieves before the inevitable march towards uncertainty awaited them all once more. Thus, as another night fell over their encampment, casting long shadows beneath towering tents, the legionary lay awake, listening to the distant sounds of guards patrolling and campfires crackling. In these quiet hours, he allowed himself to fully confront his fears, not with despair, but rather as a means through which he could fortify both mind and spirit against whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. And so, with resolve firmly planted within him once more, bolstered by the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood shared amongst this company, the night wore on until finally dawn's first light crept over the horizon. And though the future remained uncertain, he knew one thing for certain: together they would face it head-on. For in the heart of every Roman legionary lay not just discipline and strength, but also a deep-seated resilience born from trials endured side by side. a testament to human spirit that even in darkest hours refuses to yield. The weight of a leather sandal pressed against your foot, its sole slightly worn and sticky from the day's march. You pause by a stone cistern near a campfire where legionaries gather to wash their dust-laden faces in cool water. The smell of wet hair mingled with sweat and unwashed bodies permeates the air, accompanied by the faint hint of burnt wood from the fire's embers. The temperature drops slightly as night begins its slow creep over the encampment. A low murmur of conversation ripples through the group, a mix of Latin and various local dialects. You watch a fellow legionary dip his hands into the cistern, splashing water over his head before scrubbing at his skin with a rag. The sound is rhythmic, splash, wipe, splash, and it's both soothing and disconcertingly similar to how you might wash yourself after a long day of labor back home. 3 things they taught you but didn't mention. The real cost of service in the Roman legion lay not just in muscle or discipline, but also in something more insidious: endurance. Endurance that seemed almost as unforgiving and relentless as the gods themselves. The first thing is the daily grind. Each morning starts with a horn's shrill call, summoning you from your makeshift bed of straw. The sound echoes through the camp, mingling with others, creating an eerie chorus that signals another day begins. You stretch, feeling muscles coiled like springs, and shuffle towards your rations. For breakfast, you receive a small loaf of hard bread and a handful of olives. These aren't the fresh, crisp ones from the markets. These are days old, toughened to the point where chewing them feels more like grinding stones together than eating food. You break off a chunk, hold it in your palm, and watch as it crumbles slightly under your fingers before biting down. The second thing they didn't mention is the relentless pace of training. Each morning after breakfast, you begin with calisthenics, jumping jacks, push-ups, running sprints. The ground beneath your feet is hard-packed earth or dirt, rough and unforgiving. By mid-morning, sweat trickles down your back, staining your tunic a darker shade of gray. You march in formation through the camp, steps measured out as if by machine. Every move must be perfect, head held high, shoulders squared, arms swinging evenly. If you falter, another legionary will snap at you to pick up the pace or correct yourself. The sound of leather sandals shuffling against stone is constant, a dull, rhythmic thud that echoes through your head. By late morning, your feet ache from constant marching and carrying supplies. A wooden bucket hangs on a strap across your shoulders, filled with water for the day's rations. The weight pulls down on one side, making every step feel like lifting an anchor. You push ahead, ignoring the pull of fatigue that threatens to drag you back. The third thing they didn't mention is the isolation. While camaraderie exists among legionaries, sharing meals, stories, and sometimes a blanket for warmth, the larger world around them remains distant. Letters from home are rare. Those who do arrive often bring more sorrow than comfort. The sense of being cut off from your own life outside these walls grows with each passing day. In the afternoon heat, you find a patch of shade under an olive tree to rest briefly. Leaves whisper overhead as they catch the breeze, and the ground is cool against your back. A fly buzzes by, its buzzing almost hypnotic in the stillness. You scratch at the itch on your arm, but can't seem to shake it fully. The sound of sandals continues around you, other legionaries moving through their tasks or preparing for dinner. They speak in hushed tones, sharing jokes and stories that seem so familiar yet feel unattainable here. The weight of these conversations is heavy. They remind you how much of your old life has been left behind. As the day wanes, another horn sounds, this time a different note signaling dinner. You trudge towards the communal fire pit where food is distributed, shoulders hunched against the cooling air. The smell of cooking meat and vegetables fills the air, a simple stew made from whatever ingredients are available today. Salted pork or fish might be served if luck favors you. You take your place in line, passing through rows of legionaries who wait with ruddy faces and empty bowls. As you approach the fire pit, steam rises gently into the cooling twilight, mingling with the scent of wood smoke and earth. The heat from the cooking pots is welcome on this suddenly chill evening. Dinner itself is meager, just a scoop or two of stew in your bowl. You sit cross-legged around the fire, eyes scanning faces to avoid direct contact as you eat. The food slides down easily enough, but it's not until you taste something familiar, a hint of garlic or herbs, that you realize how much these simple flavors have come to mean. The night draws on with more stories and songs, laughter echoing softly through the encampment. Yet even in this shared moment, a sense of loneliness persists. You watch as others gather around their own small fires, each telling tales of home or battles past. It's comforting but also isolating, a reminder that despite these bonds, you remain part of something larger and more impersonal. As darkness fully falls, the temperature drops further. A chill settles over your body, making muscles clench slightly in response to the cold air. You wrap a blanket around yourself, something thin but necessary for warmth, and find an unused space by another soldier's side under the stars. The sky is clear tonight, filled with countless points of light that seem both familiar and alien. The sound of breathing slows as others drift off into slumber. Your own eyelids grow heavy, exhaustion seeps through your bones. You close them gently, feeling a mix of relief and dread at what lies ahead in the night. A guard shift perhaps, or restful sleep if you're lucky enough to avoid dreams that trouble even those who have seen more battles than they can count. The weight of leather sandals presses against your foot again as you drift into slumber. The smell of wet hair and sweat lingers around you, a constant reminder of the daily grind that awaits when dawn finally breaks once more. In your dreams, you are back on that dusty road, but this time not as a seasoned soldier, but as a recruit, staring up into the face of Lucius, the Centurion who had taken under his wing the new recruits, warning them about what lay ahead. His eyes were like cold stones, and he spoke with a stern voice that cut through the heat of midday like a sword. "Remember," he said, "3 things they taught you but didn't mention, the real cost of service." The first thing Lucius shared was the unyielding discipline, a code so strict it felt as if it had been branded onto your flesh with red-hot irons. Every day began and ended in formation, where every action from marching to eating meals was drilled into muscle memory until they became second nature. Yet, that same routine would grind you down bit by bit until the only thing left of your former self was a shell. Lucius continued, his voice firm but lacking warmth. "The first is discipline. It will consume everything you are if you let it. Your body and mind will become slaves to this system. You will sleep when told, eat what's given, work as ordered without question. He paused, letting the weight of these words sink in before continuing. And that brings us to the second lesson. Sacrifice, Lucius said with a hard edge that chilled you more than the morning frost. You won't choose where or how long you sleep. When your turn comes, it will be for just enough rest to fight another day. Your family and home life. Gone as soon as the first battle cry is heard. Love and laughter, those will only distract from the task at hand. Lucius's gaze bore into yours, forcing you to face a stark truth. You are not here to think of yourself or your comfort. You are part of something greater, the survival of Rome itself. Every sacrifice made by one soldier echoes in strength for another, but it comes with a heavy price, your personal life, all that makes you human. The third and final lesson Lucius imparted was the most profound. But know this, he said, his voice softening slightly as if sharing a secret only to be passed down through generations. There is no glory in the service of Rome for one such as yourself, only survival. You fight not for fame or fortune, but because your place within it ensures its very existence. As Lucius spoke, you felt an overwhelming sense of dread and hopelessness. The weight of his words pressed heavily upon you like a shackle, binding you to a fate that seemed more akin to slavery than anything resembling freedom. You dreamt further, envisioning yourself in battle, a lone figure amidst the chaos of war. Your muscles burned, your lungs struggled for air as your shield was battered by enemy spears. Around you, comrades fell, but were replaced by new ones, constantly moving forward despite the relentless advance of death. Each step brought you closer to the realization that service required a toll far greater than any man could pay. When dawn finally broke in reality, the weight of leather sandals still pressed against your foot, as if to remind you of this unyielding truth. Rome was built upon the backs and blood of its legionaries. You lay there, surrounded by soldiers snoring lightly beside you, each one unaware of the silent battle they were about to face once again. The smell of wet hair and sweat lingered around you like a thick fog that seemed to seep into your bones. It was a reminder that despite all this knowledge, you would still have to rise and fight another day, no matter how heavy the burden or cold the heart. The first breath you take feels heavy, with the scent of freshly baked bread cooling on a stone table. The warm air carries it to your nose, mingling with the faint hint of sweat and leather from nearby soldiers who have been working all day. You pause for just an instant, the weight of this smell pulling at your senses as if it wants you to linger in its comfort. You sit down next to a fire that flickers gently between two large rocks, casting long shadows across the dirt floor where you are squatting with others. The warmth from the flames dances over your skin like tiny fingers, and you stretch out your legs, feeling the weight of the day settle upon them. Your armor feels heavy against your thighs, too much metal for one man to bear in a single moment. The rustle of wool as another soldier shifts nearby is almost imperceptible, but grounds you firmly in this place and time. You can feel the rough texture of your tunic scraping gently across your skin, reminding you that you are not home or even from today. Instead, you are here, beneath the open sky with a legion at your back. The fire crackles softly, throwing shadows around like living creatures. The light is soft and golden, painting everything in an almost dreamlike hue. It's as if the heat of the day has not fully left its mark on this place yet, clinging to every surface with a reluctant grip. You wrap your hands around a small pot filled with what smells suspiciously like stew. You lift it up gently, feeling its warmth through the fabric that cradles it. The scent is rich and comforting, beef and herbs mixed together in a way that makes you think of home, though not quite right. It's as if someone else's mother had cooked this for them, and now they're sharing their leftovers with you. You take a sip, the broth warm against your tongue. The spices are sharp but pleasant, the kind that remind you of coming back to camp after an exhausting day on the march. You swallow slowly, letting it wash down any lingering bitterness of thoughts from earlier. As you eat, you can hear the soft murmur of soldiers talking around you in hushed tones, some about home, others about the next battle. The silence that follows these murmurs is thick and heavy, with unspoken fears and hopes. You know better than to join in. Instead, you lean back against a nearby wall, your hands cradling the pot as if it's something precious. The sound of armor clinking softly grows louder as other soldiers shift around you, their movements slow and deliberate. You try not to think about where this night will lead, what tomorrow may bring, or how many days like today you might endure before finding a rest that is truly your own. For now, though, the warmth of the fire and the soft sound of breathing all around are enough to make you feel anchored in this moment. The air grows steadily cooler as the day fades into night, but the heat from the fire keeps the chill at bay for now. You can see small sparks rise up every so often before they vanish back down again, tiny stars dancing across the darkness. The stars themselves, though, are obscured by the thick layer of smoke that still clings to the air after a long day's work. You close your eyes momentarily, letting the warmth seep into you like water. It feels good here, safe in this momentary reprieve from all else. You can almost forget about everything, the weight on your back, the fear gnawing at your mind, and the endless march that seems to stretch out endlessly before it. And then a voice breaks through the silence, soft but insistent. "There's still work to do," one soldier says, his tone low enough not to disturb others too much. The weight of what he means hangs in the air like an unspoken burden. You open your eyes and look around slowly, trying to gauge where exactly you are among these men. The firelight casts a golden glow over everything, but it doesn't quite reach every corner. Shadows loom large here and there, hiding small details that might otherwise be visible if light were more abundant. The sound of armor and leather moving gently echoes back at you from different directions, some closer than others. You realize now that even in this momentary respite, the work never truly stops. The soldiers around you are not just resting, they're preparing for what comes next, the dawn when another day begins, filled with its own challenges and dangers. You feel a small twinge of dread at the thought, another long march ahead, more battles to face. But as you look back into the firelight, seeing the faces of those around you in their dim glow, something shifts within you. There's an understanding that this too shall pass, a sense of camaraderie growing from shared experience and mutual support. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about being part of a larger whole, facing whatever comes together. The pot in your hands feels heavier now, not just because of its contents, but also the weight of knowing what lies ahead. Yet even as you contemplate this future, there is comfort in simply being here, surrounded by these men and their shared purpose. The fire continues to burn steadily before you, casting a warm light that seems almost like home despite all else. And so, for now, you lean back again, letting the warmth of everything around you seep into your bones. It's a reminder that despite all this knowledge, you would still have to rise and fight another day, no matter how heavy the burden or cold the heart. But in these moments, even if only briefly, there is comfort found in simply existing, sharing this experience with those who stand beside you. As you close your eyes once more, feeling the warmth of the fire and the weight of sleep pressing gently against your eyelids, a soft sense of peace settles over you. The night stretches out ahead, filled with unknowns but also possibilities. And for now, at least, it's enough to simply be here, part of this moment, part of something greater than yourself. The warmth of the fire continues to surround and protect you as you drift closer to sleep, your mind slowly surrendering to the familiar rhythms of the night. In these quiet moments, before dreams take hold, there is a strange, comforting stillness, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, life goes on, one moment at a time. In those final moments before sleep, as the stillness envelops you like a warm embrace, your mind begins to wander through the corridors of memory and the labyrinthine paths of thought. The world outside seems distant, a shadowy figure in the background, its outlines softened by the gentle transition from day to night. In this quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, memories resurface, not as vivid images, but as whispers carried on a soft breeze. You find yourself transporting back to your training camp, surrounded by the grunts of men preparing their gear for another day's march. The smell of sweat, leather, and earth lingers in the air, a testament to the rigorous life you now lead. You recall the first time you were introduced to the Legion, its structure, its discipline, its unwavering commitment to survival at all costs. Each soldier was part of a machine, each man's role meticulously defined, yet within this rigid framework lay a strange freedom. You remember the instructor who taught you how to throw your pilum with deadly accuracy, a skill that could mean life or death on the battlefield. His voice still echoes in your mind as he imparted the secrets of the legions, the secret weapon that was too dangerous to use, hidden beneath layers of training and discipline. This knowledge lingered like a dark cloud, casting shadows over every moment you spent under the watchful eyes of your comrades. The instructor had spoken with a somber tone, his words heavy with meaning as he explained, "In times of chaos and uncertainty, when all seems lost, there is one secret weapon that can tip the scales. But it must be wielded carefully, for its power to destroy is just as great as its potential to save." You had asked him what this weapon was, a simple question with an answer shrouded in mystery. He simply smiled and replied, "It lies within each of you." The cryptic response left you both intrigued and wary, a seed planted deep within your mind. As the night envelops you fully now, these memories return not as mere recollections, but as a tapestry woven from threads of experience and anticipation. You close your eyes and allow yourself to be drawn into this quiet world, each sense heightened by the absence of light and sound. The air is thick with the scent of pine needles and earth, a natural balm that soothes the soul. In this realm, you find solace in the knowledge that even as you sleep, your body remains alert, its muscles tense with anticipation. You are a part of something greater than yourself, part of an unyielding machine designed to conquer all challenges thrown at it. Yet amidst this collective strength lies a fragile humanity, a reminder that each individual within the Legion is a person capable of fear and doubt. The whisper of the night carries you further into your thoughts until you are face to face with those shadows, dark figures from the past who now stand as mentors or adversaries. You see yourself standing before them, armed not just with weapons, but with knowledge, the secret weapon that was too dangerous to use. It is a power hidden within your very being, a force born of resilience and determination. As you drift deeper into sleep, these thoughts coalesce into dreams, visions of battles fought on distant shores, the roar of engines in the dead of night, and the relentless march towards an uncertain future. But even as the dream world unfolds, there is a sense of peace, a realization that no matter how daunting the challenges ahead, you are not alone. In these final moments before sleep fully claims you, you find comfort in this knowledge that within each legionnaire lies a secret weapon, one more potent than any sword or shield. As your mind surrenders to the night, you carry with you both the weight of responsibility and the faint hope that perhaps, just maybe, this weapon might be used for good. And so, as dawn approaches, you awake with a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, there is strength within each individual soul. The day may bring trials, but it also brings an opportunity to harness the secret weapon hidden deep inside, potentially transforming not just your own life, but perhaps the lives of all those around you. With this thought lingering at the edge of consciousness, you open your eyes and greet a new dawn, a moment ripe with possibility. The weight of your cloak feels heavy against your skin as you stretch out on a simple pallet of hay and wool. The cool morning air seeps in through the tiny, smoke-stained cracks in the stone wall that surrounds this makeshift barrack. You can still smell the faint, lingering scent of last night's cooking, roast meat with its savory mix of garlic and herbs, a comforting aroma that lingers even as dawn begins to break. Outside, a soft whispering sound carries through the open doorway, a symphony of nature at work, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, birds chirping their morning songs. The sun has yet to fully rise, casting everything into golden shadows. Your eyes flutter open, and you greet the new dawn, a moment ripe with possibility. The barracks are still. Only the occasional snore from a nearby bunk or the distant clink of armor rattling in the courtyard breaks the silence. You pull your cloak tighter around yourself, feeling its warmth against your body as it muffles any noise. The floor beneath you is cold and hard. Every muscle craves the comfort that comes with rest. You lie there for a moment longer, letting the tranquility wash over you. It's not often in this life of constant vigilance that such stillness can be found. Your mind begins to drift, but not too far, staying just within reach of the present moment. The blanket pulls against your skin with each breath, and its uneven texture reminds you of home, a small comfort among these unfamiliar surroundings. A soft creaking sound from outside startles you momentarily. You lift an eye, trying to discern what could be causing it. It's only the wooden door shifting slightly in the morning breeze. A gust of cool air rushes through the crack beneath your bed, sending goosebumps up your arms despite the warmth of the blanket. The barracks are not unlike a hive. Each soldier is a cell within this larger organism, connected by duty and shared hardship. You can almost see the faint outline of other soldiers around you, heads turned to faces only visible in profile, bodies huddled together for comfort or perhaps sleep itself. Your eyes move down your row until they rest on the Centurion's diary tucked neatly under his pillow. In the dim light streaming through the cracks, it looks old and weathered, as if it has seen countless nights like this one. The leather cover is cracked in places, showing signs of wear from years of handling. It's a small volume bound with simple silver clasps, no gold or jewels to embellish its humble appearance. You reach out a hand, the tip of your finger grazing against the leather surface, as if it were the pages themselves whispering secrets. The diary is not just an object, it's a portal to another time and place, a way of bridging two worlds that are otherwise so vastly different from one another. Picking up the Centurion's diary, you turn its weight in your hands for a moment before deciding whether or not to read. Its pages have been worn smooth by frequent use, each line a testament to the struggles faced by those who came before you. You wonder what stories they tell, what challenges were overcome, and which battles were fought. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and morning dew that clings to the walls, mingling subtly with the faint hint of smoke from the nearby hearth where soldiers might have warmed themselves during a particularly cold night. The barracks are not just a place for sleep or refuge, but also a sanctuary of sorts, albeit one filled with the constant humdrum of military life. The weight of your decision presses down on you slightly as you consider whether to delve into this private history, knowing full well that its contents might reveal insights you never expected. The pages are thin and brittle under your touch, each word a potential journey in itself, a voyage through time and experience. As the sun begins to rise higher, casting long shadows across the room, you find yourself weighing the pros and cons of this impulsive act. On one hand, it might be considered a breach of discipline or even disrespectful. Reading someone else's personal notes without permission is not unheard of in such disciplined environments, but could also spark serious repercussions. On the other side stands curiosity, a powerful force that often cannot be contained by mere rules or regulations. The diary offers an opportunity to glimpse into the mind and heart of another, a chance to understand their thoughts and feelings on matters both trivial and profound. It's this very blend of duty and desire that makes moments like these so intriguingly complex. You take a deep breath, letting it out slowly as you prepare yourself for what might lie within those ancient pages. The weight of your decision is still heavy in your hands, but the promise of discovery begins to grow heavier than its physical burden. With this thought lingering at the edge of consciousness, you open the diary and begin to read, stepping into a world that time has barely touched. The first page you unfold is brittle with age and thickly inked script that spills across the vellum like ancient blood. The Centurion's penmanship was meticulous, if a bit shaky at times, perhaps due to his advancing years, or perhaps the tremor of war that etched lines into both body and soul. You read aloud as you go, in the year 64 AD, in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. Your voice is soft but steady, weaving through time like a spider's thread. The diary describes the daily life of a centurion, a man named Titus Flavius Cornelius, who led his cohort near Pompeii. His entries are detailed and intimate, records not just of battles won or lost, but also of personal trials, moments of doubt, and fleeting joys. By the light of the waxing moon, you continue to read, we marched through fields still green from spring rains, our boots leaving impressions in soft earth where soon enough only dust would remain. You pause for a moment. The weight of your decision feels more tangible now, as if every line read brings you closer to understanding this ancient world and the fate it held for Titus. Roman discipline was strict, Cornelius writes. But it is not mere brutality. There are codes that even in times of war must be honored. You underline these words with your finger, feeling a sudden connection between his principles and those you once upheld before choosing this path. The passage goes on to describe how Titus's unit was tasked with patrolling the borders of Campania. We were not only soldiers, he writes, but also protectors of the Pax Romana. As you read deeper into the text, your eyes widen at a particular entry. In 68 AD, unrest among the legions grew louder by the day. It was clear that something was amiss. You realize with a start how closely this resonates with modern times. The echoes of Titus's words mirror contemporary discussions about loyalty and duty. You move to another section where Cornelius documents an unusual event. During our march through Herculaneum in 79 AD, I encountered what seemed like remnants of old traditions, a forgotten ritual that had nearly died out with the empire's decline. Your heart skips a beat. Could this be it, the key you've been searching for? You read carefully, noting each detail. The ritual involved offerings to the gods of the underworld, conducted at midnight in an abandoned temple on the outskirts. It was performed by only one man who spoke cryptically about the balance and sacrifices necessary. You jot down notes in your own script, cross-referencing historical records with Cornelius's account. The weight of his diary feels less like a burden now. It's more of a bridge between the past and present. As you continue reading, you come across a passage that almost makes you jump. By 80 AD, my unit was decimated by disease and desertion. It seemed as if our very existence was under threat. You feel an overwhelming sense of empathy for Titus. His struggle mirrors your own, a fight to survive within the confines of an ancient order. Your reading takes a darker turn when Cornelius describes how his men began questioning their loyalty. Many spoke of leaving, joining others who promised freedom and new beginnings. It was then that I realized our fate may not be solely in the hands of those above us. With every page turned, you feel closer to uncovering what might have happened next. The diary's entries grow increasingly sparse as it nears its end, sketchy notes about a final stand against an unknown enemy before silence. You place the book carefully back on the table and lean your head into your hands. The weight of your decision is now both heavy and light, knowing that you've come closer to understanding this pivotal moment in history than ever before. With renewed resolve, you pick up another document, a piece of evidence that hints at how Titus's diary nearly disappeared forever. As you delve deeper, the lines between past and present blur, guiding you toward a discovery that could change everything. The cool evening air whispers softly against your cheeks, carrying with it a faint scent of juniper and smoke from distant fires. The weight of the leather tunic you've worn all day sinks into your skin as you sit by the fire pit in the barracks. Shadows dance around the flickering flames, casting long, dancing fingers across the stone walls. You can feel the rough texture of the ground beneath you. A thin layer of straw has been laid down to temper the hardness. The clink of metal and soft murmurs from nearby soldiers form a lullaby that soothes your mind as you lean back against the wooden wall. The weight of the day, with its countless tasks and tedium, starts to fade away into the warm embrace of night. Your eyes close briefly before opening again to the gentle light dancing across your face. You can feel the warmth from the fire seeping through the fabric of your clothes, offering a comforting counterpoint to the chill that creeps in as dusk settles in deeper. The sound of clinking metal and muffled voices around you fades into an almost imperceptible hum, like distant waves on a calm sea. Your breaths grow slower and longer, drawing in the cool air while exhaling the warmth. The smell of cooked meat lingers heavily in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of wood smoke from the cooking fires. A piece of seasoned pork rests beside you, its heat slightly warming your fingers as you pluck at it with stained fingertips. The meat is tough but satisfying, each bite a reminder of the day's hard work. As you chew slowly, savoring every morsel, the sound of sand shifting underfoot from soldiers settling into their nighttime routines becomes more pronounced. A young recruit stirs awake just outside your small circle, his voice barely audible as he asks another soldier for permission to relieve himself. The response is a gruff murmur that fades back into silence. The weight of the tunic starts to feel heavier now, pressing down like an old friend settling in close. You can almost feel the fabric of history encasing you, each thread a reminder of the countless soldiers who have worn this same garment through countless nights and days. The stone floor is cool against your bare feet, offering no respite from the weight that seems to be gathering around you. The fire pit hums softly with embers glowing red, casting their light onto the faces of nearby legionaries. Some are already asleep, their breathing even and deep as they drift into dreamland. Others sit quietly, chatting in low voices about trivial matters, how much longer until the next meal, or what mischief they might get up to if they had a bit more time. A soft breeze stirs, carrying with it the distant calls of crickets and frogs from the nearby forest. The night air is still, heavy with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. You can feel your eyelids growing heavier, ready to surrender to sleep as you draw in deep breaths that are almost a yawn. The leather tunic shifts slightly against your skin, reminding you of its protective nature, its role in keeping out the cold, protecting from both the elements and more immediate dangers. The weight is comforting now, grounding you amidst this quiet scene where so much could be at stake if one misstep were to occur. As you sit there, encased within the barracks, surrounded by the soft warmth of the fire and the cool evening air, a sense of security washes over you, a rare moment in a world full of constant vigilance. The tunic feels like an old familiar friend, its rough texture a reminder of your place among these soldiers who share this strange mix of danger and camaraderie. The sound of the fire crackles softly as logs shift, sending sparks dancing upwards into the dark sky outside. Shadows play across the walls, shifting ever so slightly with each gust of wind that whispers through the opening in the roof. The night is quiet, but alive with small sounds, scuttling rats, distant hoots from owls, and the occasional rustle of a soldier settling more comfortably against his bedroll. Your eyes close once again as you lean back into the warmth, feeling for all intents and purposes like part of this silent scene. The weight of the day is finally lifting, allowing your mind to drift into that almost conscious state where dreams begin to weave their threads. Your fingers curl around a piece of pork bone, its cool surface contrasting with the heat emanating from your body. In this moment, as you sit by the fire, surrounded by these silent sentinels and the soft whispering of night itself, it feels like anything is possible. The lines between past and present blur, guiding you toward a discovery that could change everything. Yet for now, all you can do is rest, your mind slowly slipping away into dreams where history whispers its secrets in hushed tones. The last thing you feel as the world around you fades to black is the faintest trace of a smile on your lips, a small comfort in this strange and ancient place. The world around you dissolves into an eternal twilight, a serene hush enveloping your consciousness like soft woolen clouds. The whispers grow louder, their timbre weaving through time and space as if they are part of a grand symphony performed by centuries-old voices. You feel yourself slipping further down the rickety steps of memory, descending deeper than you have ever dared to venture. Your mind tumbles into a realm where history is not mere ink on parchment, but an entity that breathes and thrives in shadowy corridors. Here, the Legionaries, those brave souls who once marched under banners now faded with age, are no longer distant figures from your textbooks or tales of valor. Instead, they are here, their faces etched with determination and weariness, fighting battles you can see but cannot fight alongside. In this realm, time stretches endlessly like a vast ocean, each second carrying the weight of countless fates. You find yourself standing before one such legionary, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, eyes that hold both the light of valor and the shadows of despair. His armor is old and battered, yet it clinks proudly as if calling out to the past. "Who are you?" he asks, voice hoarse from years spent in battle's roar. "I am just as someone who sought answers," you respond softly, your heart heavy with the weight of these ancient whispers. The legionary nods, a wistful smile playing upon his lips. Many have come seeking knowledge where only futility resides. His words linger as he turns to face an imposing stone wall that stretches into infinity, its surface etched with intricate designs, stories waiting to be read by those who dare. These walls are not just any structures, they hold the very fabric of forgotten histories and lost truths. "Tell me," you implore him, "what lies behind these stones? What secrets have they kept hidden for so long?" He pauses, his gaze locking onto your face with an intensity that makes you feel as though every fiber in your being is under scrutiny. Then he speaks again, his voice resonating through the air like a distant echo. "Long ago," he begins slowly, "the Empire built its strength not just on steel and blood, but also upon secrets. Some truths were too powerful to share openly, too dangerous for the legions marching into foreign lands." He points at one of the carvings on the wall, a figure bound in chains, etched with a sorrowful expression that tells stories of captivity and oppression. "This," he explains grimly, "is but a small piece of what was hidden. The walls here whisper tales of atrocities committed under the guise of law, cruelty disguised as justice. You feel a chill run down your spine. This is not just history, it's a warning, an echo from the past pleading for caution. But why did they hide it, you ask, trying to understand these secrets that have lain buried beneath layers of stone and silence for so long? The legionary looks around, as if searching for words, his eyes eventually settling on another carving, a figure with arms outstretched towards a star-filled sky. Because, he says finally, power is not only won through might, but also through the silencing of voices. A faint light begins to flicker from within the stone wall itself, revealing more inscriptions that seem almost alive, pulsing with energy. These walls hid knowledge, yes, but they also kept hope alight. Hidden in their shadows are countless tales of resistance, of those who refuse to be cowed by tyranny or subjugation. As you watch, a figure steps out from between the stones, a woman with flowing hair and an expression of fierce determination. She holds a torch aloft, casting light on another inscription that reads, "Resistance never ends, it simply transforms." The legionary turns back towards you, his eyes filled with resolve. "And so," he declares firmly, "the truths hidden here are not to be feared, but embraced, lest we learn nothing from the echoes of history and repeat its mistakes anew." Your heart swells with a newfound understanding. These walls hold more than just secrets. They contain lessons that could prevent future suffering if only humanity would listen. "Thank you," you say quietly, feeling a deep connection forming between your past self and these spectral figures. "I will carry what I have learned back into the light." With those words spoken, the world around you begins to shift once more, this time drawing closer to reality rather than deeper into shadowy realms. As the last traces of ancient whispers fade away, you find yourself waking from your dream with a sense of purpose and responsibility. Outside, dawn is breaking, a reminder that while secrets may be hidden within walls or whispered through shadows, they cannot remain silent forever. The warmth of a blanket wraps around you like an old friend, familiar and comforting. It's early morning now, with only faint hints that dawn has broken outside, no sudden light or noise to startle the sleep from your eyes. The air inside is thick with the smell of wood smoke, mingling gently with the scent of spiced honey and baked bread. A low fire crackles softly in the hearth near you, its steady rhythm a lullaby that soothes restless thoughts into silence. Your fingers curl around the edge of a wooden bowl, now cool to the touch after hours of restful slumber. You lift it slowly, cradling it like an old companion. Inside is porridge, a simple mixture of oats and water, flavored with just enough honey to sweeten without overwhelming. A spoon rests on top, its handle worn smooth by years of use. You dip the spoon into the bowl, stirring gently as if waking a sleeping friend. The movement stirs up clouds of steam that rise up in wisps, cooling slightly against your skin. You take a small bite, and the porridge is warm and comforting, each mouthful bringing back memories of simpler times when survival was less about strategy and more about sustaining body and soul. The weight of yesterday's events hangs heavy on you now as you sit by that fire, the warmth of the room wrapping around your shoulders. You feel a twinge of exhaustion, the ache in your muscles from endless drills, the dryness in your mouth from sleepless nights pacing restless floors. But there is comfort here too, warmth and stillness. Outside, dawn breaks, a reminder that while secrets may be hidden within walls or whispered through shadows, they cannot remain silent forever. The first light of morning seeps into this small space, casting long, dancing shadows across the earth floor where you sit. It's a promise, perhaps, but not one you want to think about too hard. Instead, your thoughts drift back to yesterday, a day that felt like an eternity in its own right. You remember the weight of your armor as it clung tightly around your body during drills, the heavy metal plates pressing down and making every movement feel like a struggle. The smell of sweat mixed with salt from the sea air, the constant ache in your back from hours spent marching under the hot sun. But even those memories are beginning to blur into something more abstract now, as if they were painted on a canvas and then slowly fading away. Each step you took seemed endless, each breath becoming harder than the last until it felt like you couldn't draw another one without stopping entirely. The weight of your shield felt like an anchor, grounding you when everything else was swirling around. You remember the sound of metal clashing against metal during training exercises, the dull thud and clang that echoed through every corner of the camp. It was a symphony of noise, each note adding to the cacophony until it became almost overwhelming. The smell of sweat mingled with dirt, creating an aroma both pungent and familiar. The uniform of your Legionnaire, simple but functional, felt like armor too in its own way. The rough fabric against your skin chafed at every movement, yet you wore it without complaint because it was part of who you were now. Each piece had a purpose: the belt to carry your tools, the sandals to protect your feet from sharp rocks, the helmet to keep out the sun. You remember the day's end when everyone gathered around for their daily ration, bread and cheese, often stale, but filled with enough sustenance to get through another night. The shared meal was a small comfort in a world where food could be scarce. You ate quickly, swallowing large bites because there wasn't much time before you were back on your feet again. Now, as morning light filters softly into the room, the stillness around you becomes almost palpable. Outside, birds begin their morning songs, a sweet and soothing melody that lifts spirits just a little bit higher each day. Inside this small space, however, it's easy to feel cocooned away from everything else. You stretch your arms out wide, feeling the muscles in them protest slightly, but not enough to wake you fully. The blanket slides down a fraction, as if sensing your movement and adjusting itself accordingly. It feels good against your skin, warmth wrapping around like an old friend who has been there through thick and thin. There is something about this moment that brings peace, a sense of stability amidst the chaos that surrounds every Legionnaire's life. For just these few moments, you can let go of everything else, the battles yet to come, the doubts and fears that gnaw at your mind during quieter times. Here, you are simply a person trying to survive another day. Outside, the world waits for its turn in the sun. Inside this small space, though, it's as if time has paused just long enough for you to take a deep breath and perhaps find some measure of peace before facing whatever tomorrow might bring. Tonight you've traveled through a meal that could poison like a mist of subtle toxins, the silence where names are lost in shadows, the Centurion's shield casting its own inscrutable shadow, 3 whispered words that echo with hidden peril, and the earthy smell of sweat, fear, and death that clings to the tides as they ebb. Each chapter was a flame flickering on distant fires, illuminating the cracks in a legionary's resolve. All these threads weave together into one unspoken truth. The Roman legion is more than just stone and steel. It is a living nightmare where survival demands an impossible balance between life and death. As you reflect upon this journey, consider where your own shadows might lie. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from. Maybe we'll find common ground under these moonlit skies. As you drift towards sleep, let go of all thoughts and details. Let them sink below the surface, settling like soft earth into the vast silence that surrounds us now. Breathe deeply, letting each exhale carry away another fragment of this world until only memory remains, eternal and patient in the long embrace of night. In time, these stories will be as much a part of you as your own name whispered on the wind.